Okay, so Dead Among the Depths, session 1. And we begin on the damp sidewalks of Venice. It's a dark January evening, the 1st of January 2012. The sounds of New Year's Eve celebrations are still sort of fading away into the distance as many of the tourists that flock to Venice each year are still sort of partying away well into the new year. As you look around, you can see fireworks glowing high above the street. There are the distant bangs of small gunpowder charges and the sparkling of multicoloured rainbow showers of dust as fireworks are let off in the celebrations. Below this, you can hear the slight swishing of the waterways that make up the streets or canals of Venice, and the gentle poling of the many tourist barges, the gondolas, that move through them. We begin our game in the district of San Paolo. San Paolo is one of the oldest parts of the city. It's the smallest and most central of the 6 sestieri or districts of Venice. I'd like to say it's one of the oldest parts of the city, having been settled before the 9th century. Since 1097, it has been the home of the city's largest market, so it draws an increased crowd of sort of foodie tourists in modern nights, although it's a little bit sort of smaller and less sort of touristy than some of the other districts. So as you look out, the streets of San Paolo are a little bit more subdued, a little bit more on the quiet side, despite the raucous displays of celebration that are taking place in the other districts. As you look to the east, you can see a large canal that separates San Paolo from the financial district of Venice, known as the Rialto, and there is a large, sort of, I suppose, slightly Art Deco mixed with Gothic influences style bridge made of what seems to be white stone that crosses over this large canal. And as we swoop down in the floating drone camera style that is so beloved of modern TV shows and films, our attention is drawn to two kindred, two dead people amongst this seething mass of life that flows through Venice like water flows through the canals. And as we pan down in the faint moonlight and the occasional brief bursts of light, this strange and almost stark light cast by these fireworks, we see that these two kindred are stood over a dead body. The body is twisted and is wearing the black vestments and the small white collar of a priest. He lies on the cobbled sidewalk, the water gently lapping and occasionally spilling over onto the stones at the side. As we continue to move in, we see that it is Aurelio de Prospero and Ugo Basilone stood, and apologies to anyone Italian listening, I'm probably going to pronounce a lot of these names wrong. But as we move in, we see these two kindred stand there. Aurelia, would you care to describe what your character looks like as you stand sort of pale in the light of these fireworks, looking down at the body of this priest?
So Aurelio is a uh, well, very apparent from the start. Aurelio is wearing a very similar garb to the other corpse that is in the scene here. Aurelio has a coat on top of his priestly vestments, but very clearly the sort of dark cassock. I'm not sure of the terminology of a priest, and has a there's a delicate chain on which a semi-ornate cross, nothing too ostentatious, but like it's detailed. There's a maybe a fake stone of not great worth in the center of the cross, but there is a chain and a cross. The cross is tucked into the breast of the cassock with a pin, leaving the chain hanging sort of free, not having to support the cross's weight. And I think Aurelio is sort of leaning in over the body, and the occasional flash highlights his face, which is sallow. It's like withdrawn in comparison to a regular individual that still lived. He would look very ill indeed. Perhaps wasted would be the word. Sort of sunken cheeks, like high cheekbones, because it's his face is quite withered, and he's got a sort of Van Dyke, slightly shaggy Van Dyke, and sort of he used to have like a thick hair, caught sort of maybe 5 centimeters. So it's like it's not too short, but there's some heft to it. You could have styled it once upon a time, but his hairline is also like high up, so it's like he's got a heavy widow's peak action going on, and it's also
I entirely sympathize.
yeah, yeah. um yeah, and it's that's and he's got like a very nondescript, so almost like a raincoat type thing going on top of his vestments, sort of like as if it was preparing for some weather tonight.
Splendid. And as the camera sort of pans across to look at his companion, we see a short distance to the west, beyond Hugo, the large Venetian Gothic building of the Basilica di Santa Maria Gloriosa di Frari, or St. Mary of the Friars, as I shall no doubt refer to it going forwards. A huge church which is home to many masterpieces of Venetian Renaissance art, and also houses the burial place of many well-known and respected Venetians. All have shrines inside. In fact, it's something of a marvel of Venice, all of these interior shrines. Not that you would know it from the exterior of the building, which is a plain sort of yellowish grey stone facade with comparatively a little ornamentation, but it has that slightly narrow sort of reaching for heaven sort of vibe that is common in many Gothic churches and places of worship. And we see that beyond Hugo. But what does Hugo himself look like?
So Hugo is kind of standing kind of ramrod straight. His garb is kind of casual combat-y style. So those camouflage kind of combats that you would see kind of many veterans kind of wearing. He's wearing and over that he's wearing like a very heavy kind of army coat, kind of real old school, kind of dark with kind of big silver buttons. He has a kind of real bushy beard. Very little of his face is kind of visible. He wears a kind of peaked army cap that kind of sits over his eyes and kind of leaves very little of his face kind of visible. He's followed everywhere he goes by the mangiest collie you've ever seen. But yeah, it's kind of run down, bedraddled, looks like he's sleeping in his clothes, kind of a veteran, army veteran hobo is kind of, I guess, the what I'm trying to describe. Um, yeah.
Lovely. And as you both look down at the dead body of the priest, you recall well your recent conversation with Don Guilo Carter, a priest who is known and important to both of you. And you recall the conversation wherein he described being concerned about a colleague of his, a man by the name of Father Pasquale Altamora, a man who he described as having behaved, and as you sort of flash back and we do the diddle-da, 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 and the sort of light of the fireworks blends into the seamless frame transition of a flashback. Where would I'm assuming you two wouldn't have just like pulled up to a church and be like, "What up, dog?" to like see this priest, but it's someone who's important to both of you. So I'm assuming, for the sake of convenience, that you would both know that you both have a connection via this priest. That might be how you guys originally met. I will leave that entirely up to you. But if the two of you were to meet this priest, which indeed you did, where would you have met him? Would it have been like a cafe, a church, a street corner, a gondola?
Does Hugo have any sort of spots where he would just absolutely not go to?
I kind of think he'd want it to be private. I wouldn't be a big fan of crowds, so unlikely to be a cafe, kind of street corner, kind of church, outdoor park.
Now you would know, Hugo, that yeah, as you say, you're a private person. You prefer private meeting places, and you will lament that over the course of your long time as a Kindred, that certainly in Venice, which is massive in that tourist trade, over the years since you've been here, it's become increasingly hard to find that sweet sort of space where you can be on your own and you can sort of think without the noise and the pollution of tourism and all the various subsidiary industries that spread off that, sort of impinging on your solitude. Now, even though the city is not that populous in terms of kindred of vampires like yourself, as it's become more and more of a tourist destination, it has brought more people, more foreigners into the city, which is a double-edged sword. Obviously great because it means there's more potential feeding for creatures such as yourself, but also bad because that solitude which you crave in some deep space down in your being is harder to find. And also, any of the, let's call them influential kindred hereabouts, take a very dim view of anything that negatively impacts the tourist trade, since so much of the lifeblood of Venice now depends on it. But as I've said, the district you're in, San Paolo, is one of the oldest parts of the city, and it is a little less heavily burdened by tourism than the other sestiaries of Venice. So perhaps you could have met him somewhere locally. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I was thinking a side alley by a restaurant is not crowded, but also people wouldn't come there necessarily.
Okay.
Unless we want just straight, because it's a priest, right? So
Yeah.
the church is always an option.
I think the alley makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the alley by the trash bins.
It's very
Okay.
much Hugo's wheelhouse.
So I'm going to ask, since both of you have this priest, Father Carter, as a touchstone, I'm going to ask each of you to tell me one thing about this priest which is true. It could be a personality trait. It could be how he looks. It could be that, oh, he owns a beat-up car or whatever. Just one little mini factoid about him that's true. It could just be, oh, he likes wearing blue jeans. Anything, just to help flesh out this guy a bit more, because as a touchstone, he will probably be featured more than once. And whilst I'm not down with that whole, like, just constantly putting touchstones in danger, I do want them to feature a lot in the game, because to reflect their importance to you guys as your characters. So I think you guys should have some input in what they're like, rather than me just sort of telling you. But take a second.
Any
to think about it,
immediate ideas? If not, I can make a stab at it.
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, so I'm gonna say, I was thinking something like Carta. So that Carta would be maybe involved in some kind of local charity effort, and I was thinking between like maybe organizing like a school for the underprivileged, perhaps like the less well-to-do. Maybe there's like an orphanage thing going.
Okay, so
I mean, let's go with an orphanage. Like he's involved with an orphanage.
Yeah, no problems. Yeah. He's involved in charitable activities concerning an orphanage. Not a problem.
Yep.
And obviously, all of this stuff is just general. I mean, we can flesh it out as and when needed later on. But as someone who's a touchstone, you guys will know stuff about him. So you guys knowing that he's involved in an orphanage isn't unfeasible. Okay, so do you have any thoughts, Rob?
I think he should have like a kind demeanor, and really like real friendly.
Yeah, happy with that.
He's well, I guess, yeah, the demeanor is the key word there, because I was going to say, like, so he's a good person, but that's not necessarily true. That's the demeanor.
As we know, demeanor is just the face you present to the outside world.
Yeah.
Okay. So, now the last thing I'm going to ask you about Father Carter is, obviously he knows you guys exist, you've had interactions with him, you're a toucher. How much does he know about you guys? Like, I'm assuming he's probably not going to know your vampires because he's a priest. However, how would he sort of like see you? Like, what would he see his relationship being to you? Would he just be like, oh, these are some people I've helped when they were down on their luck? Or would he be like, oh, these are investors in the church, or they're people who I'm trying to convert, or whatever? Obviously that will affect his
Aurelio. It's probably the case where Carter thinks that Aurelio is an old washed up priest who's trying to do the vicarious living thing through Carta. So sort of like hanging around, because he's no longer, like, he's got the vestments, but he's not a priest anymore. He doesn't have a church. He's an ex-priest who wants to still be involved in the game, and hangs around with an actual priest still.
Okay, no problems.
And maybe there's a little bit of that, like, Aurelio maybe is a bit of a like, let me be your mentor. Like, I'm a veteran
bring
of
you
this.
back into the fold.
Yeah.
Okay. How does he see you go?
So I was thinking, and I don't know how feasible this is, but that he and Hugo have known each other for 40-ish years. And he would, as a result of that, understand that Hugo is sketchy as having not aged in that period. so wouldn't have all the details or know the ins and outs of it. But
He's a little bit sort of suspicious.
yeah. Um,
Okay.
but he might have been in a teenager when he first met Hugo, and that their paths have just kind of continually crossed over the years throughout um the kind of the previous 40 years. I guess that kind of makes him about 50. And yeah, that they would just have come across each other as someone he'd know, someone be a little bit suspicious of, but someone that he would have relied on and would have relied on him over the years.
Okay, lovely. So we flash back to a few nights earlier when the preparations for the great, mainly touristy New Year's Eve celebration were just sort of getting underway. And we cut to a small side street, an actual alley rather than one of the many canals that flows through Venice in the district of San Paolo. And we see this old priest. There's a gentle rain falling. It's dark. There's a couple of like flickering lamps, and we see this old sort of slightly grey-haired priest. He's pulling a coat tight around himself against the cold. He's in his mid-50s and he has some like deep lines sort of etched on his face. He looks around and then he spots his two, let's call you friends for the moment, Aurelio and Hugo, approaching from opposite ends of the alleyway. As you both sort of get closer to where he is in the middle, in a gentle sort of almost like grandfatherly sort of kind voice, he blows onto his hands. He's wearing those sort of fingerless gloves to try and keep himself warm. It's quite bitterly cold for the season. He blows on his hands and then he looks up and says, "Oh, thank you. I'm glad you could. I'm glad you could make it. I'm sorry to inconvenience the two of you. I know everyone's getting ready for the big celebration." And he looks at the two of you as you both stop in front of him in the flickering of one of these street lights.
Yeah, with nary a movement on his face, I think Aurelio just almost like just straight whispers through mostly unmoving lips. It's fine. It's frivolity anyway.
Happy to help, Father, anytime. Just let us know what you need.
Oh, bless you both. And as he's talking, he reaches under his coat and he pulls out one of those small metal hip flasks. As he opens it, you can smell whiskey, or more likely brandy, inside it. And he takes a small nip of it, again, sort of like rubbing his hands together, and he holds it out to each of you. And he says, "Oh, this will keep the cold away." He says, I won't tell the bishop if you don't." And he sort of chuckles and holds out the cantina towards you both.
I won't today, Father, thank you.
Oh, I'll take it, and I'll slosh it to see how much is there.
There's maybe about 4 or 5 swallows in this little hip flask. It's about half empty.
Yeah, okay. I'll, go to take a swig, and I'll just, press my tongue against the thing.
Yeah, so no actually goes down. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, no problem.
There we go.
You get a brief sort of smell of like the aroma of this brandy, but obviously you don't ingest any of it. You pass it back to him. He doesn't really notice. He just takes it off you and tucks it away. He says, "Oh, that'll keep the cold off you." My son, he says, and then he sort of stops and he seems to stare for just a second, holding his gaze on Hugo, a little bit longer, just a couple of seconds longer than you would do normally, and you, with your enhanced kindred senses, both of you hear him sort of obviously under his breath as though he was just thinking to himself. He says, "Yeah, I swear you don't look a day older than I." And then he sort of shakes his head as he's like, "No, I'm getting sidetracked." And he says, "Yes, sorry about that. I've asked you here because I'm extremely worried about a friend of mine, Father Altamora. He's been behaving very strangely for weeks, and I'm to tell you the truth, I'm extremely worried about him. But as I'm sure you know," he says, looking more at yourself, Aurelia, "as I'm sure you know, that the church authorities take a dim view of any extracurricular activity, shall we say. And while I've had precious little time recently with all the additional services for the new year to look into this matter, but as I said, myself and Father Altamora go way back. He was something of a mentor to me when I first came to serve in Venice, and as I say, his behaviour recently has been greatly worrying. I'm very concerned about him."
What sort of extracurricular thing could there possibly be?
He says, "Well, it all seemed concerning, if innocuous at first. A couple of weeks ago, Father Altamora was travelling through the Rialto to see me at the Basilica, and as he passed over the bridge between the districts, he was struck down by some form of seizure or a palsy. He collapsed and appeared to be having some sort of episode. He was obviously rushed off to the nearest hospital, but by the time they'd got him there, he seemed to have recovered. He seemed fine, seemed to be his old self, and they couldn't find any obvious signs of any medical reason for what had happened. They put it down to perhaps overworking or his age, and obviously they let him go. And all seemed fine at first. However, when I spoke to the father a few days later, he and I don't want you to think I'm being sceptical here. Of course, the church is the domain of faith after all, but Father Altamora is an old man. He's in his dotage, and I'm not going to beat around the bush anymore. He said that he'd seen a vision while he was crossing the bridge, and that a divine presence had manifested itself to him.
Wow. It's quite the thing.
Well, indeed. Now, Father Altamora, although I'm greatly fond of him, has always been seen as somewhat eccentric by his fellow priests. He's something of a history buff. He spends all his free time delving into the history of the older Venetian Republic. In fact, I think it's no doubt due to his actions that probably the church authorities take quite the dim view of non-church based activities that they do. But he's always been good to me, and as I say, he was a mentor to me when I first came here to serve. But over the next week or so, there were a couple of times when I spoke to Father Altamora when he just seemed a little off. He didn't seem quite the kindly old man that I've known for so many years. It was almost as though I was talking to an entirely different person. And I at first I put it down to his incident, after all, a fugue state perhaps, or some sort of seizure can have long-term effects. But as it continued, I gradually began to get more and more concerned about the matter. He missed some of his services, which is not like him at all, despite his eccentricity. He's always been very dedicated to the church. I asked a couple of my parishioners just to keep an eye out for him, and they said they'd seen him a number of times by the Rialto Bridge, where he originally had his seizure. But he's not shown up to any of his services for the last couple of days, and I'm really starting to get worried about him. So I thought yourself, Aurelio, as a member of the church, and obviously Hugo as a, I know you're somewhat famed for your expertise in tracking people down. I thought perhaps the two of you might be able to establish whether there is actually anything going wrong with my old friend. I mean, if he needs long-term care or anything like that, I'll make arrangements for it. I'm at my wit's end. I really don't know what to do. Can you help me?
Now, there is one very likely scenario here. Did he enjoy the spirits?
No, he's never been a drinker.
Because we have listed a number of things which would go very sensibly along with a certain slew of damages caused by an excess of spirits.
I'm not, as far as I'm aware. As you know, I like a small drink myself every now and again for medicinal purposes. But I've never known Father Altamura to touch a drop in his life. Aside from communion, wine, etc.
Yes,
even then, only for ceremonial purposes.
Mm-hmm. One would hope that the blood of Christ isn't used recreationally.
As you say that, Father Carter, he sort of crosses himself, but he has a bit like a sort of quirk of a smile on his face. You can tell he's not like taking any offence at it, and he's sort of like, you had like a soft chuckle as he's sort of like, he's basically like, oh, what you like, eh? As he like crosses himself, he's like, oh, heaven forbid. And he says, but anything you can do to lay my mind at rest I'll be very grateful.
I would not be surprised, and he would not be the first priest to conceal a fondness for the bottle. And I think that as myself and good Mister here.
I was going to say, forgive me for interrupting. I have to say I'm more concerned about his age. After all, as you know, the life of a priest is a hard one, and as I say, Father Altamura is in his dotage. He's no spring chicken. I fear that perhaps the lifestyle may have become too much for him, and it may be time for him to think about retiring. I'm sure he wouldn't want to, but if it's necessary to preserve his health, I would rather see him spend whatever time he has left healthy and relaxed. After all, and he sort of pointedly looks at you, and he says this, Aurelia, after all, there are other ways to serve without being a priest.
Yes. And sometimes a person best serves God and his fellow man by knowing when to step aside.
True. Too true.
Well,
too true.
I still think that what we will find, I glanced to Ugo, I think what we will find is a man with taste that he wishes to conceal, and this is all to be over soon, I think.
Okay. And as we continue this extended flashback scene, we see the two Kindred, Aurelio and Hugo, sort of say their goodbyes to the priest, Father Carter. They exchange words of fondness, and he leaves on his way. What do you guys want to do? Obviously, we know from our start scene that eventually you do track down, or at least locate, the body of a priest. But let's find out how you get there. So you've been asked to locate Father Altamura. How do you guys go about it?
I think we would have found his apartment and tried to follow his scent from his apartment to find out where he might have gone.
Okay, so how do you intend, what method are you going to use to locate his apartment? Are you just going to ask around? Are you going to ask are you going to call back Father Carter and ask him?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, we probably would call back Father Carter.
That's fine.
Carter.
We'll assume that over the course of the conversation you asked Father Carter about that, and obviously he's the one who wants you to investigate, so he's not going to conceal that information from you. So yeah, he tells you the location of a very small and modest apartment, still within the same district. He lives near the Basilica. Because space being something at a premium in Venice, it doesn't take you long to locate it. It's like a lot of buildings here, it's sort of very narrow but built upwards rather than expanding outwards, and you can see eventually crammed in amongst these tall sort of higgledy-piggledy residential buildings, you see this small apartment building, which you check the street number that you were given by Father Carter, and you realise that this must be the place. Like a lot of buildings in Venice, it looks like over the years it's suffered some semi-serious flood damage on the sort of lower level of it, which isn't surprising. A lot of buildings do when they get the high waters in Venice, and the building itself looks a little bit in a bad state of repair. You can see a little bit of the brickwork crumbling, maybe some of the sort of timber, the exterior timbers look like they've seen better days. And like most of the buildings in this dark version of Venice that we're exploring in this game, they look as though they've started to lean and partially collapse. It's almost as though the whole city is sort of slowly collapsing into the waters, but it just hasn't realised it yet. And most of the buildings have this slightly leant over sort of aspect, as though they're slow motion over the years collapsing into the waters.
That was a misclick on my part.
Sorry. I think you were like, collapsing buildings. I must rouse my blood.
Yeah, push.
Yeah.
Let's lift this up. No.
Okay, I'm going to ask each. Can I ask you guys what your wits awareness is?
That'll be 5 for Aurelia.
Okay. And for yourself, Rob?
Sorry, it's wits and awareness.
Yeah, you don't have to roll it. Just tell me what the total is.
It's total to be 6.
Okay, so as you approach it, you notice as you look up, the buildings adjacent to this, because it's night time, obviously, and most people don't have like thick curtains here because normally the weather is fairly warm, so they don't have curtains, they have like windows open or whatever. On all of the apartments nearby, you can see like the flickering of candle lights or electric lights illuminating the windows and shining out into the darkness. However, as you look at the building where Father Altamura lives, you notice that you can't see any light shining out through any of the windows.
Okay. So I'll mention to Aurelio that it doesn't look like he's home. Is he like on the ground floor, or is it like a apartment block type thing?
There is a door from the street leading into the building. I'd say Although it's apartments, it's not like a block of apartments. It's like a load of like small, narrow buildings just sort of crammed in together. But they are individual buildings. But like a lot of sort of buildings here, each of there tends to be like one room on each floor because of the lack of space. They sort of build upwards rather than outwards, which also lends to the buildings looking like they're slightly leaning over.
Okay. And how well lit is the doorway?
The doorway, it has like a sort of a small sort of arch on it. So the doorway itself is actually in deep shadow. Occasionally, as a gondola or another boat passes by, normally with like a lantern or an electric light of some sort of hung on the prow of it, occasionally like a sort of wash of pallid light plays over it, and you briefly see a sort of water damaged wooden door which looks to have, you think, possibly brass, maybe iron. It's difficult to tell in the dark at the distance you're at, but it's like an antique sort of door knocker.
Okay. So would I be able to, I guess, fall into the shadow and try and pick the lock?
You most certainly can. So this would probably be something with a dex and larceny roll. Now, this isn't a roll to see whether you do it or not, because eventually you will do it. It's just if you succeed on the roll, you do it really quickly. If you don't, you still do it, but it takes longer, or there might be like a complication, etc.
Okay. So I roll larceny and then select dex.
That's correct. Yep, absolutely correct. Success is 1. Okay, yeah. So you sort of lean down by the lock, and look, because the lock, rather like the door knocker, seems to be an antique. And as you look around the door, you can see that a lot of the fixtures on the wooden door are obviously like antiques, although they look to have been reasonably well maintained. It's not the highest sort of like modern security lock, so you have little trouble picking it. And after sort of jimmying around with it for a few moments, Aurelio's like looking out. Occasionally you glance around, you hear the satisfying of the lock mechanism opening, and you sort of grab hold of the door as it opens inwards just a little bit, and you can just see the sort of darkness beyond.
Okay. So I will whistle to Aurelio that it's open, and I will push it open and step in.
Okay.
So as well, I presume you turn to look and whistle. I'll be sort of making this with a raised eyebrow, as if to indicate, like, should I or should I stay?
And I'll just give you a wave to follow me.
All right. Okay. So I'll glide in afterwards.
Okay, not a problem. You head into a relatively small square room. You can see there's like just in the dim light filtering in from outside, you can see there's a stair, sort of like a very crude staircase, not heading up to the next floor. The entire room is shrouded in darkness, and as you both look around, you can actually pick out that it appears as though like thick sheets of paper of some kind have been tacked over the windows, almost like makeshift shutters. And they seem to be, although a little bit of light's filtering through them, the paper seems quite thick and it's blocking out most of the light from the outside.
And did they look new or recent?
They don't look new, but they've obviously not been here for years. You suspect that they've been put up at most maybe a month or two ago, max.
Okay. And the incident on the bridge happened a number of weeks ago?
Yeah, happened a couple of weeks ago, yeah.
Okay, so we think that these are up since before the episode on the bridge.
Yeah. It's difficult to tell, though, because they're just pieces of black paper. I mean, they're not torn and they're not showing obvious age, but if someone had put them up a long time ago but just been careful, that would be the same, or they could have just been put up recently. It's very difficult to tell.
Okay.
Unless you've got some specific means of discerning the age of the pieces of paper.
Well, Speaking of, um, I will, as we enter, I will try and attune mine two eyes
Okay.
to the unseen world. Which is to say,
Sense the unseen.
yeah, I've just shunted it into.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it on your character sheet now.
Hmm.
So, wits plus Auspex or resolve plus Auspex then?
Yeah, yeah, that would be that'd be resolve for me, and I do think I didn't set up the roll for this. Oh, that'll be quickly remedied. Rollable. It doesn't browse because it's free, so that's
Yeah.
good. Okay, and now I should be able to, unless I'm not. I'm trying to set up the sheet so that
roll.
it's all fancy. So that's Auspex. Oh yeah. So it's for me resolve plus Auspex.
Yeah.
And it is rollable. Oh. I'll just do this then. Okay. So resolve. Let's see what that did. Auspex resolve. Well, it did the thing. Okay,
Nice.
4 successes.
Yeah, that'll do. Okay, so as you attune your senses to the unseen world that exists ever presently around us, it's as though the colour seems to leach out of everything surrounding you. Things don't so much change as more the life seems to drain out of everything around you. The wooden beams you look at seem a little bit more decayed than they did previously. The sort of the ragged pieces of paper tacked over the windows appear a little bit more frayed and a little bit more ragged and torn. You don't sense any sort of entity or anything hiding from normal sight. However, as you step into the room and you look around, you accidentally knock over a pile of similarly just sort of like torn paper. It's sort of just been torn out of a pad, sort of haphazardly. So in the dark, you knock over this pile of papers, and as they fall to the ground, they all appear to have drawings on them. The drawings all appear to be different attempts to depict the same subject, which is a figure holding its arms out as though to embrace somebody, surrounded by light. And all of these drawings are all slightly different, but they all show this same figure, as though the person had been drawing it over and over again, trying to capture something, and then some of them are crumpled up like they were discarded as not being good enough, and then they feverishly started on that, and they're done in all different types of media. There's like pencil drawings, charcoal drawings, there's probably a few sort of like a few paintings, but like just done with like cheap paints, like nothing particularly special. And as you knock this pile over and your eyes fall on this scattering of these different depictions of the same figure, you feel a cold chill that you can't quite explain run down your undead spine.
Do you see anything?
Obviously, you hear the like as these papers get knocked over, and you likewise, in the sort of what small light is filtering in from the outside under the makeshift lights, you can see all of these figures. Perhaps not quite as well as your companion who's using this special sense, but you can make out that they're all basically the same sort of figure.
Yeah, I can see them. Is it a human figure? Do we know? Is it clear?
It's very sort of smudged and distorted, so like you can't pick out individual features, but it does appear to be a human figure. But the depiction, it's trying to depict it as though like light is emanating from the figure, and that's sort of like smudges and sort of fades out and blinds out the individual features. All you can make out is this figure sort of holding its arms wide as though it was going to embrace the viewer, and this light just seems to be like spilling out of it, although the light varies in its depiction. And after looking at a few of these different pieces, maybe like picking a few of them up, because like I said, there's a big stack of them, you think perhaps that the person who created these pieces was dissatisfied with how they tried to like capture this like light coming out of the figure, and they'd screw it up and they'd start a new one, and then they wouldn't like that one and they'd screw that one up and start a new one. And they've almost been obsessively continually drawing this figure as though desperate to sort of capture the true essence of whatever it is that they saw.
Perhaps he did have a vision.
It could still very well be, well, in the worst case scenario, alcohol-induced psychosis as well. But there is something that is a bit off in this place. Let's try and find any sign of life. Food, even. Anything to indicate that someone was here.
Yeah, so I guess check the kitchen, the fridge.
Yep, you head forward into the small kitchen, which is on the ground floor. Obviously, it's cooler. It's nearer the water. It's very basic. Obviously, the person who lives here, Father Altamora, lives a very humble life, which isn't surprising given that he's a priest. It has very like basic amenities like a sink, a wash bowl. I say probably a small refrigerator, nothing too ostentatious. There's some food, some milk, a bit of like orange juice in there. Nothing ostentatious. You have a quick look as well. I really, you don't see any signs of like wine or alcohol or anything of that nature.
And what dates are on like the milk and the orange juice? Are they like fresh, or are they?
You lift up that it's like a carton of milk. You lift it up, and before you even look at the date, you can smell it, and you can tell it is not fresh.
Okay.
Like you can smell that sort of sour, like curdled scent drifting up out of it. And when you do sort of holding it at like arm's length, turn it round so you can see the date, you can see that it's like 4 weeks out of date.
Okay. Okay. So I'll call out to Aurelio. It looks like he hasn't been here in 4 weeks. I'm not sure the dog will be able to get a scent if it's been that long.
And as you mention your dog, you do indeed hear like a bark from the poor bedraggled creature, and you notice that it's sort of looking up the stairway to the next level up. It's wagging its tail furiously, and it's alternately barking and then letting like a low, like a rumbling growl emerge from itself.
Okay. And would I recognize that as excitement or fear, or?
It's normally, you know that this is normally how you've sort of trained your dog to respond when it thinks there might be some danger.
Okay.
Normally when it's like it's picked up like a strange scent or it's heard something that it doesn't recognise.
Okay. So I'll turn to Aurelio and say the dog seems to have found something. Let me go and have a look.
If it's a body, don't let the beast touch it.
And indeed,
Okay.
as you start walking up the stairway to like what must basically be like the lounge, so on the second floor, as you get to about halfway up the stairs, you start smelling blood.
Okay.
It's too faint for human senses to pick up, being attuned as you are as a kindred. The scent of old, stale blood, which smells fairly unpleasant to you, starts reaching your nostrils long before it would have become noticeable to mere human senses.
Okay. So I'll just smells like blood. I'll call downstairs as I walk up.
Yeah, I will be keenly getting up there as well. Having also checked, like, is there a bathroom on this wall? On this floor? Sorry.
There's not like a bathroom as such, but there is like a
Yeah.
small wash basin.
Lavatory.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, it's like the smallest like student bathroom you can imagine is what's here.
So I will quickly pop in there before I go. Idea is Aurelia's looking for any kind of like medicine, or one of those boxes on the wall with just first aid stuff, maybe some medicine if that's the kind of thing that this person would have. He's just checking if there's anything medical
You
around.
do find a small cabinet. It's not locked. It's just like a wall cabinet. When you open it, there is some very basic sort of medicinal supplies. What you would expect like a very elderly man to have. So there's probably like a bandage for like strapping up his like gouty leg. There's some sort of
aspirin.
Yeah, there's like mild painkillers like paracetamol and aspirin in there. Nothing ridiculous, just like general like household sort of stuff that people would have around. There's probably some plasters and stuff like that. There's maybe like a bit of like iodine in there or something to just to swab out sort of small wounds.
And also one of the interesting points for Aurelia is like there's no like prescription stuff going around. No, nothing like under the counter with a bit more of an intense edge to it. So if we're just dealing with bandages and paracetamol, he's good. We're gonna go up.
Okay, you head up. You open the door at the top of the stairs, and you head into a small lounge. There's a couple of wooden chairs. There's what looks to be like a clothes cupboard, basically some sort of cupboard on the wall. There's a small table with a little sort of radio on it. There's a couple of old sort of photographs showing various sort of priests. And in fact, as you look at them, you can see your much beloved priest, Father Carty, but like in his younger days. You see both him and Father Altamora sort of stood there. Altamora's got his arm around him, and they both, it must have been taken about 20 years ago. They both look very much younger, and they're both sort of smiling. They're sort of stood slightly awkwardly as though they've like posed for a photo. They stood in front of the basilica like. But like I say, it's quite a sort of faded photo. It must have been taken some time ago. Perhaps they just asked a tourist to like take them a snap of the two of them together or whatever. But there's a couple of like pot plants that seem to be wilting slightly as though they've not been watered recently. And then there's another stairway going up to, you think from what you saw outside, must be the top level of this building.
And the blood, is it coming from up this level or from the level above?
It's difficult to tell because it's permeated. Do you have any sort of anything that might enable you to like narrow it down a little bit? I mean, you can sort of let the dog loose and rely on that if you want.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay,
you let the dog loose. It sort of sniffs around. It's like giving it the running around and snuffling about everywhere. Again, it sort of snuffles near this table with the radio on. You can see there's another sort of couple of piles of paper on there that you can't see what's on them yet. The dog doesn't disturb them because it suddenly gets distracted and it runs up to the door of this cupboard and it starts like pawing with its front paws, scraping against this thin wooden door of this cupboard.
Okay. So I'll whistle at it to stop.
And it sits down and looks at you, its ear like perked up.
and I will approach the desk and look at the papers.
Okay, you look at the papers. It's an odd mishmash. You expect maybe you'll see more drawings of the figure. You don't. What you see are a number of drawings that appear to depict a maze or perhaps a labyrinth, rather like you'd see in like a puzzle book, just with lines like drawing a strange maze. You then see a number of pieces of paper that appear to have writing on them, although it's in a language that you don't understand. And then you see like the top piece, as you're sort of like looking through from the bottom, you flip through for the top piece of paper and you see that this is written in Italian. It's written in pen and ink. The sort of the fountain pen is lying next to the pile of paper. It's written in a very sort of shaky and a rushed hand, and it says, "The angel is not what I thought it was. Oh God, what have I done? I must turn myself in immediately." And then there is no more.
So I'll show that paper to Aurelio, and I'll kind of nod towards the cabinet in a will I open it kind of way.
So the writing was in Italian, and it said,
Yeah, it said the angel is not what I thought it was. Oh my God, what have I done? I must turn myself in immediately. And then it sort of trailed off as though like the person had just like thrown the pen down, as though they were in like a hurry.
and there was something that Ugo didn't recognize.
Yeah, there's a number of these pictures of like a labyrinth or a maze, and there's also a number of pages that have writing on them, but it appears to be in a different handwriting and in a language that you're not familiar with.
Right. So not Latin then.
It's not Latin, however, as the two of you are if the two of you want to spend a few minutes looking at it to try and work it out, you can do, or do you just...
I will pocket it for now.
Okay, not a problem.
Right.
If at any point in time any of you want to work out what it is, you can
Yep.
make me an intelligence academics roll
Yep.
to see if you can determine what it is.
I will get on that as soon as we locate the blood.
No problems.
Yeah, I will, give Ugo the nod.
Okay. So I will approach the cabinet from the side.
Okay, as you approach the cupboard, the smell of blood gets much stronger as you get closer to but it is old, stale blood.
Okay.
And there's a slight sort of sweet, putrefying smell of rot just below it.
Okay. So kind of standing at the side so as not to be in front of the door when it opens, I lean out and kind of pull the door open.
You pull the door open. As you do, the body of a young woman dressed in fairly sort of gaudy, like standard sort of tourist clothing, brightly coloured top, sort of cut off like jean shorts, falls out of the cupboard. You can see that her throat appears to have been cut directly across with some force, so it's actually gone part way through and it's almost sort of severed like the vocal cords, and the whole of the front of the body is covered in blood which has sort of dried. Obviously the body has been here for a little while because the process of decay has just sort of started. It's not entirely putrefying yet, but to your vampiric senses you can smell that it's just on the cusp of starting to sort of decay seriously.
Okay. And with my forensics expertise, can I work out how long she's been dead?
You think less than a week. However, you know that, obviously you've been in the area, that aside from the sudden cold snap, it's been quite warm recently, so that would have accelerated the decaying process.
Okay. Okay. So he doesn't seem to have been here in a month, or certainly hasn't eaten here in a month. But this girl is dead just over a week. And if you were a priest who had killed an angel, or what you thought was an angel, who would you turn yourself into?
No, I believe this man killed for the angel.
Okay.
Question is, who would present themselves as such, and why? And why here? Is there does the woman have ID? Is there anything? Is there a I don't know, backpack, something?
You quickly search, you don't find a backpack. However, you do find a wallet in like the back pocket of her shorts. There is also a mobile phone in the back pocket of her shorts. Let's see, I'll generate a random name for this young lady. You start as you mean to go on. Okay, so you see the woman's name is Carla Serrano.
Yep.
Based on her, like a driver's license and a cash
Yeah,
card, all that sort of stuff.
The whole thing, the wallet, into the pocket it goes with all the effects.
You notice as you sort of look at because obviously she's got like a photo driving license. As you look at the picture on there, it's obviously the same woman, but obviously her body has started to decay a bit, so it's more difficult to tell the actual body. As you look at the sort of picture, you can see that although she's dressed like a tourist, due to like the sort of look of her, she looks as though she might have some sort of Italian ancestry in her somewhere. And whilst Carla, as it isn't necessarily an Italian name, you know that Sereno is certainly derived from an Italian name.
And John, the blood on her is... Sorry, I'm guessing that with a slit throat there'd be like an awful lot of blood.
Yeah.
So do we think that she was murdered in the cupboard, or that she was murdered somewhere else and put in the cupboard? Is there enough blood in the cupboard for us to...
You expect, given the amount of blood in the cupboard, that she probably wasn't killed in the cupboard. She's probably been shoved in there. And as you continue searching the cupboard, you actually find that there is a thick blanket sort of on the floor of the cupboard, which is absolutely soaked in this dried blood. So it looks to you as though she's been killed elsewhere, wrapped up in this thick blanket, and then basically shoved in this cupboard.
Okay.
Because you're right, the wound she's got, blood would have just poured out of it.
Okay. Okay. Should we have a look at the last floor?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll head up to the next floor.
Okay, not a problem. You head up to the top floor, which seems to be basically the bedroom where the priest would have slept. There's a fairly simple single bed in here. There's a little dresser, a little set of drawers where clothes would be kept, a small like bedside table with like a little, what looks to be like the stub of a long burned out candle set in a little saucer on there. However, as soon as you sort of start going up the stairs to this room again, you can smell the blood. And when you walk in there, this place is like a slaughterhouse. There's like the bed soaked in dried blood. There's dried blood splattered on the walls and on the floor. And as you look at the sort of wall that you're facing behind the bed as you walk in, you can see that using the blood, again, there is a drawing, albeit crudely and hastily done, of this figure with its arms held out in blood on the wall.
Okay.
And then you can see that the sort of, most of the bed sheets appear to be missing. Perhaps that was what was used to wrap her up in.
Okay. Is there any sign of the knife?
Not that you can see. If you want to
Okay.
search, you can make a roll for it, but obviously that will take more time. You have a quick look around, you can't see. You can
Okay.
search if you wish to, but like I said, that might take more time.
Yeah, I'll do a search. I think I want to find the knife.
Okay, so I'm just trying to work out what skill would be good for that. Boom, boom, boom. Investigation. So some sort of wits investigation. Although when I shout out an attribute and a skill, it's just a suggestion. If you think like, oh, maybe this would be applicable as well, that you've got an alternative, just shout out. Worst I'm going to say is like, no, you've got to make the original roll. But if I think it's applicable, I'm quite happy to let other sort of combinations work as well.
Cool. Wits investigation works.
Okay.
2 successes.
Okay, not a problem. And remind me, what is your intent? What are you trying to find?
I'm really trying to find the murder weapon.
Okay.
Or any other documents as well, because we know that he's written a few bits, but the murder weapon or any kind of weird stuff.
Okay. So you spend a fair amount of time, and not a ridiculous amount of time. You spend like maybe half an hour, so literally like going over the place with like a fine tooth comb. I mean, obviously you'd hear if anyone was trying to come in. It doesn't look as though anyone's been in this place in the last few days, or they'd have already found this. So you go over the place with a fine tooth comb. You find knives, like kitchen knives and stuff like that, nothing that's stained with blood or anything, obviously a murder weapon. And you're just about to give up when, as you're sort of given the last once over to the bedroom in the top floor, in a little bit of light coming through the window, you catch something like glinting that seems to have like fallen down between the wooden floorboards. And as you lean closer to get a look at it, you reach in and you pull out what appears to be a human fingernail. You quickly check the woman, and she doesn't appear to be missing any fingernails.
Okay. And is it like a long fingernail that looks like it might be?
It looks like a normal fingernail. However, it does have like blood on the underside of it.
Okay. Okay. So I'll pocket that. I presume I have some sort of evidence bag style.
Yeah,
Look.
you've been like hunting people and stuff like that. That's fine.
Okay. Is there enough blood in the bedroom that there might be a second body somewhere, or do we think that there's just enough blood for the one woman?
It's possible that them. I mean, you think it's most likely there's only the woman. It's possible, depending on the size of another person, there could have been another person. But like I say, you've been over the place with a fine tooth comb. You've not found any evidence of another person. So, if there was another person murdered here, they're obviously not here anymore.
Okay. Okay. So, Aurelio, where do you think the priest would go to turn himself in? If that was his intent.
It would make sense that they would go to, well, run back to the church. But it could be the police. Which one do you want?
Kind of happier if it was the police.
Would you want to check that then, as I attend to the church?
Yeah.
I will need some time here to arrange things with the tourists downstairs. We need to put that away. But I think we maybe won't profit from further prodding here.
No.
So, what I would suggest is, unless you wish otherwise, perhaps go and see if you can chat up anyone from the authorities, and I will respectively tend to, well, the Mother Church, and we'll see if he has gone to give confession.
Okay.
And indeed, as you're saying this, you hear sort of, because you're near the window, you hear like footsteps in the street outside, getting closer to the small building you're in. And as you look out of the window, you see one of your colleagues, your coterie members, who perhaps is not quite so affiliated with the father as yourself, but as you look out of the window, you see Franco Lombardo. So, Darren, would you like to describe what Franco Lombardo looks like?
It's quite difficult to do because he's got such a plain looking face. He's you wouldn't recognize him in a crowd. He's got, you know, brown eyes, fairly sort of normal complexion, sort of medium length hair. There's nothing at all about him that stands out. So you'd see him, you'd sort of introduce yourself, you'd walk away. 5 minutes later, you wouldn't be able to pick him out again. So he's a very strange character in that sense.
Indeed, he
Obviously,
is.
these guys know him.
Of course, yeah. And as the two of you go, and Aurelio, as you look out of the window and you see this innocuous person, you almost sort of don't give him a second look. And then something about like the way he's walking and the sort of the way he carries himself deliberately to like not draw attention to himself causes you to recognise your coterie mate, Franco Lombardo. He wasn't involved in the original conversation between yourself and the good Father Carter, but he must have seen you talking and like followed you to find out what's going on, which isn't surprising. He probably, as a coterie mate, he probably followed along, think he might be able to provide assistance or help you out in some way. What do you got? Obviously, he's not aware of anything that's going on. What do you guys do?
So he's outside on the street. I guess there'd be like maybe a banging of the shutters to attract attention, and then, you know, motion for him to get up onto the third story of the building that we're in.
Yeah, so you've followed your companions, Franco, into the San Paolo district. It's the oldest district of Venice, and you followed them to a small area of like residential buildings. And as with a lot of buildings in Venice, because they don't have space to build outwards, they build upwards. So the building you're looking at appears to be a small residential, probably like 3 rooms, but like each room is on a separate floor. It's like long and narrow rather than short and wide, this building. And you see, as you look up, following the building upwards, you see Aurelio sort of in one of the windows, his pale face highlighted in the moonlight filtering down through the clouds, and you see him sort of give you a quick gesture.
Okay. I shall, attempt to make my way in. So What sort of building was it? Did you say? Sorry.
It's a small sort of stone and wooden building. It's a residential building. It's it's got 3 floors, but on each floor there is just a single room. The first floor appears to have like a small sort of wash basin, very basic kitchen facilities, etc. As you start heading up to the staircase, the simple stone staircase to the second floor, you get about halfway up and you start smelling old stale blood. It's faint but unmistakable, and a slight sense of sickly sweet putrefaction underneath it. As you walk through this ground floor, you also see there is paper scattered everywhere, and on each of these pieces of paper there appears to be a drawing of a figure holding its arms out as though to embrace someone, with that light emanating from it. But many of the pieces of paper are screwed up, like the person wasn't happy with the drawings and they screwed it up and they frantically started another, and they screwed that up and they started drawing another. And as you continue up, the smell of blood getting stronger, you get to the second floor, which is basically a lounge. There's a table with a radio on it, some pot plants that don't look like they've been watered. There's also a cupboard set into the wall, which is open, and the body of a young woman who is dressed in the sort of stereotypical tourist dress, you know, brightly coloured sort of crop top, cut off jean shorts, is lying on the floor. There is dried blood caked down the front of her, and her throat appears to have been cut open in quite a deep manner, to the point where it's almost severed like the vocal cords.
Well, I can.
Is anyone still on the
Continue
second
to
floor as Franco comes up?
Unless Ugo goes down, I think no.
No, I think we're still on the third.
Okay, not a problem. So you continue up to the third floor, Franco, and the third floor is basically just like a bedroom. There's a simple bed, a small bedside table, small cabinet that would have clothes in, again a couple of plants that don't look like they've been watered for ages. The mattress of the bed is absolutely caked in dried blood, although it appears to be missing its sheets. And on the wall behind the bed, daubed in dried blood on the sort of cracked stone wall, is another image of this sort of hazy, indistinct human figure with its arms held wide, drawn in dried blood that's started to brown with age. And you see your colleagues, Aurelio and Hugo, obviously sort of in the midst of like investigating the room and sort of giving it a once over. As you enter, you just see Hugo sort of lean down. He seems to have spotted something in between the sort of slats of the wooden floorboards. He lifts it up and holds it up to the light, and you can see he's holding a human fingernail with a little bit of blood caked underneath it. He sort of holds it up to the light and looks at it.
So, what have we managed to find?
Fairly little, in truth. The priest doesn't seem to be here. The body's been here a week. The priest hasn't eaten here in 4 weeks. So we found some writings. We found some pictures. I found his fingernail. The writings indicate that the priest has gone to turn himself in. So I am going to go and investigate at the police station. Aurelio here is going to speak to the church.
To be clear, we are looking for said priest who has absconded for one reason or another. There is an angel figure you will have seen on some of the papers down one story, and I think that the body you will also have seen downstairs is there because this priest in particular has dedicated that murder to the angel.
And is this the first body that's been found,
Quite.
as far as we know?
Hmm.
How long's this priest been missing?
Well, Ugo has suggested that perhaps a month thereabouts, depending on
That's how old that
several
body is.
things, but 4 to 5 weeks seems to be the timeline.
But the body doesn't feel that old. The body feels about a week old.
Oh, okay.
But it has been that long since the priest has actively used the, shall we say, facilities of this building.
And is this building his? Do we know?
He does seem to
It's
reside
his
here.
residence.
Yeah. Okay.
As I was saying, we probably do not benefit a lot from poking around further. And this needs to, the thing down one story needs to be taken care of, and I will do this. Perhaps you two will head to the police while I tend to the mess, and well, we shall reconvene latest before dawn.
Who put us onto this originally then?
A mutual friend of Ugo and I, another priest, worried for his colleagues' state of being, I suppose. They have been acting erratically.
I take it we don't know who the victim is yet.
Oh, we do.
Oh,
I have the wallet. But just to be clear, as you go to the police, this woman never died here. The woman never entered this residence. We do not know who this. No one has died, as far as we are concerned.
so we're just reporting the disappearance of this priest?
Asking after him, I would say, at this point. As concerned friends and members of the congregation. And perhaps asking for assistance if the police might be obliged to lend some resources for this.
And the victim, is there any clues to why they were chosen? Is there possibly another victim that we need
So
to be?
I fish out the wallet, and I'll take out the if there's an ID card or a passport.
Yeah, there's the photo driving license is the nearest.
Yeah, so I'll hold up the driver's license. Is that like Italian driver's license or?
It's not an Italian driving license. No, it's a European driving license.
Yeah. So I'll show it as like tourists.
Oh,
is
so-
why she died.
Okay.
And
so if
also
the-
why she should not have died, as we know.
But there's no clue to who could be the next victim if there was to be such a
No,
victim.
I think this is entirely arbitrary. This person was a victim of
Chance.
this too is an act of God.
As you're saying that from the back pocket of the dead woman, you hear a
One moment. I'll go and
Please
fish
hold.
out the phone.
Okay, you fish out the mobile phone. It appears she's received a text message. The phone is locked. Obviously, you don't have the code for it. But you know, like you get like the little summary you can see on the opening screen. You can see like the first like half of whatever this text message is, and it just says, Carla, are you still on that Ancestry.com BS tip?
Where's my thing here?
Maybe you could try and unlock it with a fingerprint of the body. Such a few
So,
works on the front.
as a side note, John is the final arbiter, of course, but 2012,
Oh,
it's
is
a
that what we
college
are?
student. I'm not sure what kind of phone she would be lugging around, but with a technology dot of 1, John,
Yeah.
do I have an idea of what would be the best way to unlock this device?
I'll say if you make me an intelligence technology roll, if you succeed, you can work out a way to unlock it.
All right, intelligence. And it should roll it because I pressed the skill and then I select the ability. It should roll the thing.
Success is 1. So it
That's
takes you a while because you have to do a bit of trial and error with like the code, but eventually you do unlock it. The text message. I'm just going to ask what languages you speak.
Italian and Latin.
Okay, you do not understand the text message.
Yeah.
It's in English.
Yeah. So that will have to wait until later when I get it translated.
But yeah,
I speak English. I do speak English.
All right, yeah. In which case,
I do show it around.
Yeah, you'd see it enough to like know, oh, that's English, even if you didn't understand it. You show it to Franco, and it seems to be from someone called Jason, like just says Jason at the end of it, and he basically seems to be saying like, oh, are you still on that Ancestry.com based trip to Venice that you're taking? And he's basically said, oh, he thinks that all these Ancestry sites are a load of BS anyway. And he says, still, if you manage to track down any like long lost relatives or like family treasure or anything, let me know. I don't expect you'll see this until you get back. I know what you're like with your phone, but hope you have a good holiday, Jason.
Fairly generic. But that certainly tells us, tourist, no ties. Well, potentially no ties unless there are ancestors or relatives around. But yeah.
Well, in this case,
I might have a look through the contacts, John, just to see if there's any phone numbers with like the area code,
A lot of local dialing
or
codes.
the country code, or you know what I mean, something that might be.
Okay, you don't find any sort of local area code like numbers. However, you do find that she's effectively like made some notes in her phone, and you're able to piece together over like, I mean, it's a very crude like note taking app, but I'm sort of fudging it because I can't remember exactly what phones were like in 2020, 2012. I'll be honest, but she's made some brief notes, and it appears after like reading them and piecing it together that she did one of these sort of test your DNA sort of ancestry tests online, and it was revealed that she had some Italian ancestry, and she's basically come to Venice as a tourist, but also because she wants to try and like track down her family. You see that her last name is Sereno, which appears to be a sort of slight corruption of an old Italian name. So she came here for the purposes of tracking down, whether her family originally came from Venice. And you can see she's basically got like a few addresses written down, but they're like the local library and like places where she could start her research. It doesn't look at the time as she made this note as though she'd like really started her research or had any sort of breakthroughs.
Okay, well, I guess we'll go and report, like you say, report to the police, see if they've had any, if they can put out some sort of missing person.
Okay, so Franco and Hugo are going to the police, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and while they're doing that, what are you up to, Aurelio?
Aurelio dons the white gold mask and makes a few calls, and we need to scrub the place of corpse, blood, all the angel references, basically all the art that has been created here in recent weeks, and the murder evidence. which is to say that Aurelio is leaning on the on the lordship beats that we have chosen. So he has a mask that combines gold and the sort of porcelain features of ostensibly his sire, and he's as a result he's got connections specifically that help him in covering up death.
Yeah, I believe you have the equivalent of 4 dots of influence when it comes to covering up death. So that is not a problem. That will be done. You have the ability to just do that without even making a roll. I'm just going to ask, for the purposes of filling in a bit of detail. Obviously, like you say, you put the call through, for want of a better term. When you arrange for this, what form do your connections take? I mean, is it literally like guys turning up in a white van and like scrubbing brushes? And
I think there is a legit, and we no doubt will explore all of this further down the line, but I think there's a legit
like cleanup crew.
There's a cleanup crew that is connected to necromancers, like mortal people, black magic practitioners in their sort of libraries of occult lore, most of it known to Aurelio to be just complete hogwash, but like mortal practitioners of the black arts who would be known to Aurelio because he is in that show himself, and also the reason why it's these guys who come in with the dedication and the discretion mainly is the key, is because, well, there's an understanding that like Aurelio knows that they're not going to go to anyone, because if they get burnt, it's going to be bad times for them, because Aurelio's arranging corpses for these guys, and if they get caught, that's going to be
presumably as well. Like, as long as whatever you call them in to deal with is dealt with, you don't really care what happens to the evidence. Which
no,
presumably, like taking a dead body and all this like weird, bizarre stuff would be quite appealing to a group of mortal necromancers. But
and it's only ever bodies. Like, he takes all the like the phone and the wallet. Never, like, he's gonna burn those later. Like, he doesn't give them that stuff. He just gets the body and then gets them to help with the cleaning.
Yeah. So a short while after your comrades have left, a fairly nondescript sort of van pulls up, like, and it probably have some like gaudy sort of like painter and decorating company like logo on the side. Some guys come out wearing the standard, like overalls, carrying like those paintbrushes on the long handles and stuff like that, carrying like work bags, looking for all the world.
It's John Wick all the way.
Yeah, looking for all the world like they've been hired to like redecorate this apartment, which, in a sense, they have.
Kind of.
But
they're going to take the paper off the wall because it's blank.
they head in. They immediately sort of go to work. Obviously, you made the arrangement. You put the call in. They immediately go to work. They start sort of gathering everything together, that you want to take, and sort of like putting the body in one of these bags and cleaning the blood up and stuff like that. And they go to work on that. So we're going to cut across to Franco and Hugo, heading to the nearest police station. You walk in. It's a civilian police station, state police effectively. As you walk in, you can see it's a fairly small sort of local sort of station. There's a slightly overweight guy stood at the desk with his shirt's like a little bit untucked. He's like unbuttoned it a bit, probably against the heat, and he's just not rebuttoned it now. It's got colder in the evening. There's a couple of people in the background, obviously sat on chairs waiting to see other people. There's various police and like detectives walking around. There's like a vending machine and a little waiting area. There's probably like a couple of cells at the back, 'cause it's more like sort of sheriff's office than like a big like metropolitan police station. But you can see this guy. He's got like a little moustache, about the same size as mine actually. Moustache is he's slightly overweight, slightly pudgy. He's He looks like he's sweating a little bit, despite the fact that it's not that warm. He occasionally lifts up a report next to himself, and he's like, and occasionally like writes. And then you see, like, as you walk in, there's a couple of people, like a couple of police bring in like someone who's obviously been brought in for questioning. He, like, in a very uninterested manner, like, takes their details, writes down their name, and he's like, "Oh, take it to interview room 2," and they sort of lead them through, and then he goes back to sort of his main occupation, which seems to be like leaning on the desk. Obviously, you guys can see this through the two sort of doors that swing open. What do you want to do?
Are we inside yet?
You're just outside, like the doors have just opened. You've seen these guys come in, and the doors are just starting to like swing shut again.
So I think that before I went in, I would like to try and find some kind of homeless vagrants kind of in the neighborhood. And I think that
why would a vampire want a homeless vagrant?
Who knows?
A mystery for the ages.
Indeed. Okay.
Oh, good point, John. We'll revisit the corpse business after this. I have one more thing I need to do.
That's absolutely fine. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to make me a wit streetwise roll. Again, this isn't to see whether you succeed or not, because you will find a vagrant eventually, but if you fail the roll, it'll take you like a long time, especially given recently there's been a big push by the Venetian government to actually not sort of solve the problem of homelessness, but just shuffle it out of sight a bit so it doesn't like distract from all that tourist money coming in.
Okay. And do I get a bonus because I'm effectively a vagrant myself?
Yeah, I'll give you a 1 dice bonus.
Okay. So you said streetwise and wits.
Yeah.
And modifier is just +1. Is
That's
that how that
correct,
works?
yeah.
Okay. And here we go. 5 successes.
Okay, so you're literally just about to walk into the police station. Like, oh, I want to find a vagrant first, and you literally just like glance down the side street next to the police station, and you can hear like a sort of rustling noise from down there. And as you look down there, you see there's like one of those big sort of like tips / like wheelie bins, you know, the big metal ones. And as you look down, you see like a pair of legs, like with tattered old trousers on and like one shoe missing. Like as this person's obviously like their legs are like hanging out, and their upper half is completely concealed as they're rummaging around in this bin, and you hear like coming from inside the bin.
Okay, and how well is Franco dressed?
Yeah, he's quite well dressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Hugo just turn to Franco and just be, wait here so you don't scare him, and I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah.
No,
that's no problem. I'll keep an eye out, basically.
So I'll call out to him as I'm getting nearby, trying to get his attention as he's dumpster diving.
Okay, as you call out, you hear like a slight shriek of surprise from inside the bin, and the legs like disappear into the bin. As he sort of like, basically like he's like, "Oh, I've been rumbled," and he like jumps into the bin, and like the lid comes down because he's right next to the police station. He's like, "Oh, the police have come out, they've caught me," and he just hauls himself in.
So I'll just, I guess, get closer, open it up, and say, "Hey, I need a favor."
You see this fairly old fellow that's difficult to tell because he's in such a bad state. He's got like this matted beard. He's got a slightly sort of crazy look to his eyes. His clothing is like a mismatch of just like stolen and sort of worn out clothing. Because obviously like he just wears clothing until it falls off him, and then he just like steals another piece and chucks it on top. You can see in his hand he's cradling what looks to be like half a cheeseburger, like wrapped up in sort of greasy paper, and you can see he's got like half a crumpled up like pack of cigarettes in his hand, and he's like, "I need a favour," he's like, and sort of like draws them closer as though he's worried like you're going to steal these like horrendous treasures from him.
So I will pull out some notes, euro notes, I guess, and just say I really just need a minute of your time. I don't have any interest in your food. I'm just looking for some information.
Okay. As you sort of, he seems a little bit suspicious at first, but the sort of wad of notes you get out seems to very quickly allay his suspicions, and he slowly and quite painfully, as like maybe he's got like a touch of like arthritis in his shoulder or something like that. He sort of painfully like heaves himself out of this dumpster with a grunt, sort of disappearing the half cheeseburger into his filthy coat pockets. He takes out one of these like quite crumpled up like cigarettes, and he starts sort of like patting himself around, and he's like, you got a light?
Yeah, and I'll pull out a lighter and
yeah, you light his cigarette, and he's got slightly shaky, sort of unsteady hands, and he's like, and sort of like coughing and half sort of exhales this cloud of smoke, and he's like, oh, what do you want then? He's like, I wasn't doing no harm, mister.
No, nothing about that. I'm looking for a priest who may have or did visit the police station in the last few days.
He sort of laughs, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm like that with the clergy.
And
he sort of coughs again as he like tries to take a drag off his fag.
You'd have noticed this one. He was very odd, very strange, potentially lost his mind.
He says, oh,
would have caused a scene.
Oh yeah, he says, yeah, I remember him. He says, yeah, he was a weird one. He says he came up to the police station. He said, oh, I don't remember how long ago it was. I've had a bit to drink. The old memory gets a bit hazy when you're my age. But yeah, he came up to the police station. He were running, and he looked really scared. And then he ran into the police station. I heard talking inside. I don't know what they said. But then a few minutes later, he came walking out of the police station, looking cool as a cucumber. And then he just walked off.
Ah.
Ever so weird.
Which direction did he walk in?
He says, oh, he headed in that direction towards the bridge to the Rialto.
Oh, okay.
He says the reason it struck me is, like I say, I ain't never seen a man look more look more scared than that when he went running in there. I thought they were sure to arrest him just because of how he looked. But then, like I say, when he came out, he looked calm as anything.
Okay. And did he seem to have any blood on him?
He says, no, not as I saw. One thing I didn't notice that was weird. It was quite warm, and he was wearing gloves, which I thought was a bit odd.
Okay. That is odd.
He says, yeah, actually, and he starts like patting in his pockets. He says, he on his way out, he threw me a bit of change, actually. Hold up, I'm sure I kept it here somewhere. And yeah, there we go. And he takes out like a small silver coin, and he sort of holds it up to you, but trying to hold it in a way that he obviously doesn't want to let go of it. And he holds it up to this sort of moonlight, and he's like, what do you reckon to that? I ain't never seen a coin that looks like that.
Aye. And what symbols are on it, or can I tell?
You have a look at it, and it does appear to be an Italian coin. However, it appears to be like a really old Italian coin, almost like an antique coin.
Okay.
Rather than like your modern euros or anything like that.
Okay. Would you take 50 euros for the coin?
He says, oh, I don't know about that. I reckon it'd be worth a fair bob this to a collector. He says, oh, if you can stretch it to 60, I might. It'd kill me, but I might be able to let it go for a 60.
Okay. No, I'll give you 60 for the coin and 40 for the information.
Yeah, he sort of literally like shoves it at you as soon as you're like, oh, you can have 60 and another 40 on top. He's like, yep.
Okay. Well, I'll leave you to your business.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
I'll leave him there. Walk back towards the police station.
As you start walking off, you hear him like whistling as he's walking off, and he's obviously like counting his money. And you hear him like under his breath. He's like, "Oh, that's not a bad day's work, Corrado. Not bad at all." And he like walks off counting this money. And then a few moments later, you hear like the sound of the bin lid going as well, like he's got back in the dumpster.
So then when I get to the door of the police station, I'll steel myself up and push my way in and approach the... sorry, before I do that, I'll tell Franco to look upset in the corner, like he's lost something.
In the police station.
In the police station, yeah, so they could see it. But...
I want to keep away from him because he's quite repulsive to the sort of normal bystander, but he obviously hides that quite a lot. But if they see through it,
so I'll approach this policeman, and I just say, "Good evening. I'm the Italian equivalent of a private eye."
Sorry, you can just say private eye. Well, it's fine.
Yeah. I'm looking for a priest who seems to have some amnesia. Kind of seems to be losing his way home. Can't find his way home. Seems to be losing his mind a little bit, kind of going into his dotage. He's quite old. His nephew over here is quite concerned for his well-being. We believe he might have been here about a week ago. I'm wondering if you might remember him.
The overweight guy who's on the desk says, yeah, I remember him. Came in babbling, said he committed a crime and wanted to turn himself in. Then when I tried to press him on the details and find out what was going on, he seemed to like pull himself together, like say quite an old boy. And then he said, he basically apologised profusely and said that sometimes he had like forgetful spells and he imagined things in his old age. Now, if he'd have been younger, I'd have been half tempted to book him for wasting police time, to be honest. But like I say, he was an old fellow and a priest to boot. So I just told him to make sure he took care of himself, and he went on his way as happy as Larry.
Okay, you don't know when that might have been, do you? Was there a record?
He says, oh yeah, it'll be written down somewhere, and he starts like looking through the piles of paper on his desk, and he says, it would have been last week.
Okay. And no reports on him since? No other incidents or...
At which point he sort of like, he looks back as though he's looking like into the back of the police station, and he's like, Spada, and you see like an Italian woman at the back, so sat at a desk, looks up, and she's like, yeah, what? He's like, have you heard any more about these bridge weirdos of yours in the last few weeks? She's like, no, it's all been quiet. Why? Who wants to know? He's like, there's a fellow here asking about that weird old priest we had in the other week. And you see this woman like get up and she starts walking over, and she basically the guy you've been talking to seems like as soon as she walks over, like she's obviously a detective because she's not wearing like a uniform. He says like, as soon as she walks over, he's like, right, I don't need to know anymore. He's like, I've done my due diligence. Like, I've passed it off to somebody else. Lovely jubbly, I can get back to like being lazy. This young woman walks up. You can see she has effectively like a name badge on which says Detective Rosina Spada. She walks up, she holds out her hand, and she says, Detective Spada, how can I help you, sir? She takes out a cigarette and lights it.
I'm a private investigator. I'm looking for Father Pasquale Altamuro. His nephew here has kind of hired me. He's concerned about the old man. Seems like he's suffering bouts of amnesia, sprouting nonsense from time to time, and we really just want to get him to the hospital so he get checked out because it definitely feels like something's wrong.
She says, "Oh, yeah, the as Umberto was saying, the old priest did come in here, but I didn't know he had a nephew. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind speaking to his nephew. So like I say, he did seem in a bit of a tiz when he came in here, and she starts like still chatting to you, but starts like walking over towards your boy Franco."
Your boy Franco is currently deploying the Mask of 1,000 Faces. As soon as he, just before he entered the police station. So if he is picked up on any cameras or has to speak to anyone.
Okay, so you're appearing as a nondescript sort of person at the moment, and like you say,
Yes, the blurb.
so you need to make me a rouse check. There's just a roll button just to the right of your hunger chart to trigger that. Okay, you have failed that, so that the power still works, I believe, but your hunger increases by 1. Because you're calling on the power of the blood.
I think it.
Yes,
I
it
did
has.
actually-
It's done it. You rolled 2 at the start, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you changed.
Yeah.
So is arouse always 1d10? Is it?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
But basically, level 1 powers don't generally require a rouse check. Anything above that often does.
Okay.
Okay, so you've been using Mask of 1,000 Faces to appear as nondescript, but obviously that's called on the power of your blood, so you are starting to feel a bit more hungry. As like you say, you're sat down, sort of trying to look a bit upset and whatever on one of these seats in the corner. As Detective Sparta walks over to you, she sort of like leans on the wall next to you, and she leans down to basically be a bit closer when she talks to you. And as she leans forward, a small silver cross on a chain around her neck sort of falls out of her top, and you feel a momentary sense of panic like grip you as you're like, even though you don't breathe, your like chest seems to tighten, and you feel the urge to shrink away from this folkloric bane that you suffer from.
Yeah. So what I do is, as soon as I see that, I sort of get up and walk away from her, and just say, "I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it." And I'm sort of covering my face as I'm upset.
Legit, she just
Trying
sort
to
of
just
holds
get
her hand
away.
up and she says, she's obviously been trained in sort of like grief counselling or something similar, and she holds her hand up in a very sort of calm, evenly measured voice. She's no reason to suspect you're not who you say you are. Why would you come in here and be like, "Tell me about this priest that I'm not related to"?
Yeah.
You know? She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's fine. I didn't mean to upset you. I just wanted to ask some questions about your uncle, the priest."
Yeah,
Look,
and I just try.
I can stay over here. I don't want to crowd you. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. If I stay here, can we talk? And she sort of holds her hands up and like doesn't move any closer to you.
Yeah.
Or then you can still
What do
see
you
the
wanna-
glint of the silver cross sort of like
Yeah.
hanging around
I
her neck.
sort of peek through my eyes occasionally, make sure she's not coming any closer.
Yeah, she's literally like not approaching. She doesn't want to scare you off because she won't get any information.
And
But she says,
I just say, I can't say, I can't. Don't know if I'll be able to help you.
She says, "Look, well, all I want to know is I've been looking into your uncle's medical background. It appears that a few weeks ago he suffered an episode while he was crossing the Rialto Bridge. According to the medical records, and she sort of like reaches out and just like taps like a card file. Says according to the medical records, he had all the classic indications of having suffered some form of seizure or convulsive fit, and yet by the time he was taken to the nearest hospital, he was absolutely fine. But based on his behaviour coming into the police station and the sudden change in his demeanour, I'm a little concerned that there may be unforeseen effects from the episode that he suffered. And with a man of your uncle's age, obviously we're very concerned. I did attempt to persuade him to remain in the police station so we could talk further when he last came in, but he wasn't having any of it, I'm afraid. And given that he's committed no crime as far as I'm aware, I didn't have the power to hold him here. But I really do think, if you know where your uncle is, it would be in your best interest to persuade him to seek further medical attention. After all, such things are the brain is still a mystery to medical science. So there could be all manner of delayed side effects that only show up later from such an episode. And I would hate to think of anyone, especially a long-serving member of the church, suffering unnecessarily. So if you do know where your uncle is, I've attempted to contact him via the telephone, but no luck. If you do know where he is, please advise him to seek medical attention.
That's why we're here. We don't know where he is. We need help to find him. This is last resort. I'm sure if I could see him, speak to him, then maybe I can find out what's happened. He just said he had a funny turn. I didn't know this is what had happened to him.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to ask, can you make me a charisma insight roll?
So do I click on the charisma or the insight?
Insight, and then it will have a pop-up
And
where
then
you can
tell you
select
which
your-
one to pick. Okay. Yeah.
Now, you're not going to get the normal social penalty for being repulsive from this, because this is you trying to work something out rather than you trying to persuade someone. Okay, so 3 successes. When you say this, and you say, oh, he's gone missing, we're worried about him, you briefly see, like, her expression, like, seems to change a little bit, but it's very, like, brief. Like, she's obviously very practiced at, like, presenting a certain face, and she covers it up very quickly, but her expression seems to flicker for a few moments, and you see her hand sort of, like, almost impulsively reach out towards the card file on the desk next to her, and then she appears, based on your insight, she appears to, like, want to say more, but she's sort of, like, glancing around as though, like, she thinks she perhaps could say more, but she's not sure she should. And she's sort of, like, she's paused for a moment as though she's like, oh, should I tell him something else, or should I just keep my mouth shut?
Yeah, I'll try and lay it on a bit thicker then. So sort of both hands over the face, and I don't know what's going to happen to him. He's gone missing before, but only for a day or two. I fear the worst. We really need to find him as soon as possible.
Okay, well, I'm not going to ask you to make another roll because you passed the initial one. That additional push seems to make her mind up for her, and Detective Sparta sort of looks around for a bit, and you see she tucks the card folder under her arm, and then she says, look, I can't say any more at the moment, but I'm going to go out the back for a smoke break in 10 minutes. If you meet me around the back by the dumpster, I might be able to tell you some more information that you might find a bit interesting. Like I say, I'd hate to think of an older gentleman, a priest especially, suffering unnecessarily. But I can't say any more here. Meet me out the back of the station in 10 minutes.
And I'll just nod and sort of walk towards the door.
Right, follow.
Not a problem. You guys head out. We then flash back over to the priest's abode, where the cleaners are sort of doing their business. And you said there was something else you wanted to do, Aurelio?
Yeah, before they arrive, I would have ransacked the kitchen for any kind of plastic container.
Yeah, I think you could probably find
They need-
a couple of those like Tupperware, like plastic boxes.
Yeah, I'll get the largest Tupperware I can, and
Yeah, you find a Tupperware box that has like some sort of like fruit cake in, perhaps from one of like the parishioners.
yeah, and I'll get that in the the trash,
Yeah,
and I'll get to the body, get out my it's one of those familiar from so many movies and TV series. It's one of those like leather wraps that you unroll, and there's some tools in there. It's all scalpels of different kinds.
yeah,
I take one of them, this is a prick a finger, and I'll get to work. And the intention here is I want to drain the fetid blood of this corpse into the Tupperware cup as much as I can.
yeah. I don't see a problem with that.
It doesn't need to be like I exsanguinate the entire thing, but I want to take a Tupperware cup of the fetid blood.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Corpse. So this is indeed a thing I can roll for, or have to rather, as a feeding thing. So I've set this up. I think it works when I press that. So this is like hunting, quote unquote.
Yeah, but you have to feed from
on a
cold dead
corpse.
blood, don't you? Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember.
Which is a roll for resolve and medicine, because you need to know how to get the thing, because
Yeah.
it's not like regular, like it doesn't just sprout out. So let's see if I just click this and it does it. There we go.
Yeah.
I had a couple. So yeah, I drained the it's gonna have coagulated, so it's gonna be
Yeah, it's
wonderful
slightly
looking.
gelatinous.
Yeah. So I get the blood jello in my to go cup, and I put that away before the good folks come over from the agency. And yeah, I direct them, I help them sort it out here, and yeah, we leave behind the perplexingly antiseptic smelling apartment with some new wallpaper.
Indeed. Okay, so we jump back to the police station 10 minutes later. Hugo and Franco round the back of the police station by the same dumpster that you were near earlier, Hugo. Only this time the detective, Inspector Sparda, is there. She's still got the card file tucked under her arm. She walks out, you see her take a cigarette out, and she lights it. You see her have a quick sort of look up and down the alleyway, make sure no one else is about. And then she leans in and she holds up this cardstock file, which is quite thick. There's quite a lot of paper in it. And she says, well, now, while I can't tell you anything specific about anything more about your uncle, says this file here, and like I say, she holds up this quite thick file. I mean, probably about that sort of thick. He says this file contains details of a number of people who have suffered similar medical incidents to your uncle whilst passing over the Rialto Bridge, stretching back almost 50 years. And I'm pretty sure if we had reliable records that went back before then, I'd probably find that there were more going back even further. But the further you go back, the more difficult it is to find reliable information. And she says now, most of these people appear to have seem to have recovered afterwards, and they've demonstrated some odd behaviours. I don't mean to worry you, but a few of them have died shortly afterwards. Most of their, she shuffles through these records. A number of them, their relatives reported that they were behaving strangely, or they appeared to have fugue states where they didn't really seem like themselves. I've even got mentions here of people, if you look at the furthest back records, of people speaking in tongues and other nonsense like that. But yes, that's why that lazy fuck Umberto in there said it might be another one of my bridge weirdos. It's something of a that's why I don't want to talk about it in front of the others. I got involved with one of the prior cases, and I became interested in it and started tracking it back. And it's something of a joke at the station that this is my pet project. And well, you can imagine how people like that and she like jerks a thumb back at the direction of the station door responded to the fact that there's a DI looking into such fanciful things. I mean, when my superiors heard about it, it damn near cost me my job. But so I've had to keep it on the down low ever since. But as soon as I found out about your uncle's case, I added it to my file. I've even managed to get a hold of his. I'm sure you've seen them, but I've even managed to get a hold of his medical records from when they first took him to the hospital. Not that it shows anything, of course. That's the frustrating thing. Despite all these people having suffered seizures, fits, whatever you want to call them, and us having access to a number of the medical records from the more recent cases, when someone's taken to the hospital, they're given whatever scans they give them there, CAT scans, whatever. They seem perfectly fine. There seems to be no medical reason for their seizures, which is obviously ridiculous. There must be. People don't just collapse for nothing. But it's strange, the quick recovery rates, the altered behaviour, the fact they all occurred in the same location. Look, my instincts, I've been on the force for years, my instincts are telling me there's some sort of connection, but I just can't see what it is. And like I said, with me having to be extra careful, I can't dedicate the resources and the time to pursuing it that I would like. I can't risk losing my job over something like this.
I was going to continue with the obviously distraught sort of approach, and I'll just say, I mean, could we have a look at those cards? Maybe we can spend some time looking through them, see if there's any more connections.
Yeah, of course. And she takes a few steps towards you and holds out the file.
I'll sort of reach as far as I can away from her, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, obviously she's still got this cross around the neck, which isn't unusual. A lot of people are quite religious in Venice, but yeah, I'm going to say if you want to actually reach out and take it, because you're having to get closer to it, you're going to have to spend a willpower to reach out and take it, because obviously normally you'd have to spend a willpower not to flee, but in this situation you're actively trying to reach closer and take something.
So I just click a box.
Yeah, you just click the first box of your willpower.
Yeah.
Yep,
it's essentially taking damage to your willpower.
Yeah, basically.
Spending it.
You do it like you do with health.
Why is it one line or single line and double?
So the meaning behind those is the single line is just normal, regular damage. When you get the double lines, as in crossed out, that's called aggravated damage. That's sort of deadly stuff is happening to you. So example would be someone hits you with a bat, that might be, it's just regular damage going on. Someone shoots you with a rifle in the chest and you're a person, aggravated damage. And that same kind of logic applies to willpower as well, but of course in different,
So it's just harder to recover from.
Yeah.
It takes a longer time.
I believe with willpower, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, Johannes, that
I'll have to look into that, because
I believe effectively you can spend twice your willpower, because once you've filled it up with minor damage, you can continue spending, but then it starts filling up with major damage, and obviously once you get into major damage, it takes you longer to recover or get that willpower back. So if you spend loads in a short period of time, it's more mentally taxing and draining on you, so it takes you longer to come back from it. But at one point you recover that fairly quickly. But you manage to steel yourself against this feeling of sort of absolute dread that grips you as you almost can't take your eyes off this silver cross as you reach out and you snatch the file away from them, sort of withdraw backwards, but you spend the willpower, so you're not fleeing across the rooftops or anything, but you've sort of grabbed it and sort of like just drawn back a bit,
Yeah.
which she puts down to the fact, yeah, you're still nervous. Maybe you don't trust the police. A lot of people don't. So again, she's just trying to be like non-threatening and non-confrontational, because like she said, she genuinely thinks you're a grieving relative, and she's obviously a religious person herself. She doesn't want to think of like an elderly priest out there on his own. You know, she's like, well, I can't do anything about it within the law, because technically I don't know how long they've been missing for. They've not been reported missing, so I can't do anything yet. But, you know, you're a relative. Maybe if I give you this, you can do something about it.
Yeah, I like to think that the mask, you know, of the Thousand Faces is sort of covering up some of the
Yeah, it
grimace
is,
and
yeah.
stuff as I'm sort of approaching the.
It's
the silver
definitely helping with her, reinforce her assumption that you're just a grieving relative.
Yeah, yeah. And I sort of, I step back and I say, yeah, I will spend as much time as I can and look into this, and if I come up with anything, obviously you'll be the first to know. Maybe
Thanks,
there's something.
I'd appreciate that.
Maybe there's something that's been missed.
She says, he says, keep the report, just don't let anyone know you've got it. I've got another copy of it. Look, I better get back inside, or people will be wondering where I've got to. But yeah, if you do hear anything, and she takes out like a police notebook, scribbles a mobile phone number down on it, and knowing that you seem to be a bit rattled, she holds out the paper with a mobile phone number on to you go, rather than yourself, because she doesn't want to scare you anymore as a grieving relative. She holds
Yeah,
out to you.
I'll be sort of looking through the cards already, trying to be involved in that. So not
DI
noticing.
Sparta looks at you. You go, and she's like, "If you do find anything, give me a call, day or night. That's my personal mobile number. Look, I've got to get back." And she sort of stubs out a cigarette that she's barely taken a couple of drags of, and then she heads back in through the rear door into the police station. As she opens the door, you briefly hear the hubbub of general conversation inside, and then it goes quiet as she shuts the door behind her.
Well, yeah, maybe this is something we can use. My guy's got a speciality in missing people as well, John. I don't know how that would help with investigation of all these people.
If you made an investigation roll, it will give you an extra dice.
Yeah, cool. Well, should we go and meet back with what we've found? Discuss
Yeah, I
our
think so.
next actions.
Okay, so where do you go? I'm assuming you guys will have somewhere you've arranged a rendezvous. Where do you guys want to meet up?
I guess we're outside the basilica, right?
Yep. Like I said, the basilica, it's this large sort of Gothic Venetian church which has all these different shrines to famous Venetians who are buried there inside. It has two restored organs which are supposed to be some of the most marvellous things in Venice, but from the outside it looks fairly plain, with this sort of yellow grey stone sort of front built in a sort of Gothic style. But yeah, you meet outside there, that's not a problem. All three of you meet up. Over to you.
Aurelio, we spoke to the police. No idea where the father is. He did stop by about a week ago, in a confused state of mind, very similar to what you would expect based on the writings. While in the police station, he had a total change of heart, and it seems like he switched to became calm, potentially back in control of said angel, and left the station. And separately, we also found out that he is the last in a long line of people who have had seizures on the Rialto Bridge and have had a number of side effects, memory loss, confusion, all very similar to the father. The records go back 50 years, but the police detective believed that it's probably been going on for much longer.
We've got the records to look through. I'll show him the wad of cards or whatever with different names and details on.
Another change of heart. Peculiar. Should we look through the papers and these as well? And I have the materials from the.
Yeah, and then maybe we should investigate the bridge, see if we can't see anything untoward.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so as they're having this discussion, as you've said, Franco, you've obviously been leafing through these files and looking at them. You find a number of commonalities between these cases and the one you're currently looking into. You find mention that a number of people drew these strange, like after they'd had these seizures, they drew these strange, like maze-like designs, and they seemed to have some of them had these fugue states where their personality seemed to like abruptly change. You also notice... Sorry, go ahead.
Go on, sorry. No, go on.
You also notice a similarity in the names of the people that's on there. There appear to be... There's odd outliers, but in the main, the people who've suffered these seizures appear to share one of 4 family names. There is the Corradino family, the Tallarico family, the Paro family, and the Loredan family. Like most of the people mentioned in these records have one of those 4 surnames.
What was the third one, John?
Paro, P-A-R-R-O. And as you sort of look at him with the information that Aurelio and Hugo have got, you would know that the tourist woman, whose last name was Sereno, that is a corruption of the Italian name Corradino. That's like a more modern version.
So literally all the names, there's no exceptions. They're all within that.
There's a couple that don't fit that pattern, but in the majority, like 95% of them.
And then is there any patterns with time of day or date of the month or time of the year, or is there anything like that that's sort of common?
Not that you can see. They all appear to be fairly spaced out. You notice that like there's no point where like they occur straight after each other. They all appear to have happened either early morning just as it was getting light, or late night just as it was getting dark. But beyond that, there's no sort of correlation between the times of day.
And does it give information if they were on their own or with others, or?
All of them seem to have been on their own at the time when this occurred. You don't have like real like medical information for the older ones, because obviously they were like, oh, they seem all right, send them on the way. Whereas the more modern ones, it's like they would obviously like ask them to come to the hospital for a checkup, etc. But all of like the medical tests you have, whatever scans they ran on them, don't seem to show any obvious like medical symptoms. So the hospitals were like, well, you know, according to every test we've ran, there's nothing wrong with you. So, you know, just like be careful, and they sent them back out again.
And the priest's name is not one of those 4, though, is it? He's an exception, is he?
He is, yeah.
Okay.
One thing you do notice as well, Franco, is that all of the people who you have a record of, with the exception, as far as you're aware, of the priest, Father Altamora, are dead. You can see on each of the sort of names like scribbled at the bottom in like a biro, which you assume maybe the police detective did that when she was doing her research. All of these people are now dead, with the exception of your uncle, as far as you're aware.
Does it have like cause of death on there, or
Most of them it just says unexplained or natural
and
causes.
they're all various ages? They're not
Yeah.
like all. Yeah.
You do notice that, obviously being a conscientious detective inspector, the young policewoman has sort of written down like the date of death next to it, and you do notice that those who were older when they had these seizures seem to have died like sooner after it happened than people who were younger. But that just might be a case of, well, you know, they're less resilient, or their bodies can take less punishment. You don't know.
And is there a general sort of pattern to that as well, sort of within a couple of weeks or a month, or?
It seems if someone's sort of like the other side of 50, it seems like most of them have died within a month.
Right. And you guys have sort of investigated, and you think he went missing about a week ago, or that's how long the body's been?
That's how long the body. His seizures were almost a month ago, certainly a number of weeks ago.
So he's quite close to that timeline.
Yeah.
With sort of my fairly good contacts within the city and resources that I can call upon, would I have anyone that I could access any sort of CCTV footage anywhere to try and see if we can have any sightings of him anywhere within the city?
What level of contacts have you got?
Contact level 3, resources 4.
Okay, yeah, I think it'd probably take. I mean, you're not asking for like any like massive like high security footage. You know, you'd be like, "Oh, can we get CCTV from this shop or whatever?" Yeah, I think you probably could. It'd take you a few phone calls and it'd take a little while to organise. But yeah, you could do that without a roll. That's not a problem. You just got to like call a few appropriate people.
I mean, do we think there'd be any? I mean, can we have a look to see if there's any CCTV that would potentially cover the bridge area?
Yeah, the bridge is quite a big sort of tourist attraction, so there would definitely be CCTVs covering the area.
Yeah,
like, from like local establishments and stuff like that.
Yeah, see if I can sort of pinpoint what would potentially be the best angle and best camera, you know, for the best quality footage and whatever. Yeah, try and spend a little bit of time sort of pinpointing that to see if we can see any noticeable effects when they cross the bridge and on that day, if the footage goes back that far.
Not a problem. It probably takes you like an hour or two, but you do eventually manage to track down on a shop that sort of overlooks the Rialto Bridge. You manage to get hold of their CCTV footage, and obviously you have to go back through it to like get to the appropriate date. And when you find the date where Father Altamora was supposed to have suffered this seizure, you watch as he walks across the bridge, just like whistling. He's like an old man, so he's like taking his time, you know, he's like walking along. He heads over the bridge, and as he gets sort of like halfway across the bridge, he pauses for a little bit, you know, he's a bit out of breath. He's an old man. He's sort of stood there, you know, catching his breath, sort of like looking out over the canals and just watching the world go by. And then there's a flicker on the video footage, so like it briefly breaks up into static, and then for just a few seconds as the static clears, it's almost like a photo that's been like double exposed, where you can see like two sort of outlines, but like slightly sort of out of sync with each other, and then it flicks back to normal. And then you watch as the priest appears to collapse and appears to be like having this seizure, these violent spasms on the bridge. People like rush over to try and help, you know, locals, tourists, etc. And eventually you see the events unfold as described. An ambulance turns up, they take him away, and obviously that's when he goes out of view of the CCTV cameras.
And with sort of the sort of abilities and that I possess myself, do I think anything's happened during that footage that would be, something like Mask of Thousand Faces or something like that that's affected the camera? Would I have any inkling if sort of magic?
I would say the only way you could really tell that is if you obviously checked out the camera and like eliminated like mundane possibilities. You could make it a wits investigation roll, or if you've got any particular like technology skills. I mean, if you did wits technology, you'd find more specifics out rather than investigations a bit more general.
I mean, he's got good wits, not so much technology, but between the two, he could give it a go.
Yeah, go for it.
So technology, wits.
Yep.
Okay.
4 successes. Okay, so you pretty much disassemble the CCTV cameras, and you basically justify that to the owner of the shop, where you're like, oh, look at this footage, how it like glitches out there. There's a problem with your camera. Oh, but don't worry, as a favour, because you let me look at the footage, I'll sort it out for you. Don't you worry about it. And you basically take the camera apart completely. There's nothing wrong with it in terms of like the actual technology. There's no reason it should have glitched at that particular point or had that weird double exposure effect. You then like reassemble it, pass it back to them saying, oh, there you go, I've sorted out the problem for you. They're very grateful. That's all covered over. They don't suspect anything, but you're pretty sure now there's no mundane reason that sort of weird effect should have happened on the camera.
And I guess the other way to confirm that is to see if I could find another camera sort of seeing the same footage and see if it does the same thing. But
you could probably locate another sort of CCTV camera, but again, it would take a bit of time and a few phone calls.
Yeah, but I'm fairly convinced that it was going to be the same. So what do the others think? What do you think our next move is?
I think we should try and translate the papers.
What papers are these?
We found a number of papers in the priest's residence that have some writing we didn't identify on it.
Yeah, I've only got Latin and English for languages.
Yeah. So if we have time, I was under the impression that there's something we could do to get at the papers, John.
Indeed. And I would tell you, as you all sort of like meet up and now you've got a bit more time, as you examine it, you become convinced that although it's written in like an old language, it's not actually a language so much as it's like a cipher, like a code, which is why you weren't able to read it. However, as you're looking at it, you do recognise, Aurelio, a number of symbols that are of a sort of recognisable nature that are used in the sort of occult circles. So if one of you wants to make an intelligence occult roll, you might be able to like piece together the gist of it or sort of unravel the code.
I'm pretty good at that, but you're probably better.
Oh,
Nice.
that certainly is a. So I do believe that is. Let's see, because it's been a while since we've rolled these dice.
Yeah.
Because I got the special one, but
It would say if it was a messy critical or a messy failure.
Oh, the thing is going to pick that up. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, it picks
so
it up.
we don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it comes up and it just says possible messy critical or messy failure.
All right. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Okay,
so
fine.
you eventually manage to decipher this writing, and it appears to be written. It appears to be someone ranting about someone called Palladino, and it basically says, to paraphrase, it basically says, I finally managed to discover it. I knew they were hiding something. That bastard Loridan has hired Palladino to construct his damn labyrinth. To think that one of the greatest architects of Italy should stoop so low to construct such a monstrosity, even for the Academy of the Unknowns. Well, I won't stand for it. I'll see this. I'll see this shouted from the rooftops. I'll see that everyone knows this secret. They won't be able to keep it quiet any longer. Well, my name is not Niccolo Vasile.
Yeah, I will
And then
whisper this as I...
it has like a customized glyph, which is like his symbol, like effectively like an occult signature.
Yeah, this is like Aurelia knows what this is about. It's his arcane marking.
Indeed.
Yeah, so I will have whispered these as I work them out from the material.
Indeed, and anyone who has academics 2 or more as you're discussing this, you will recognise that, given the mention of Palladino and him being the greatest architect, they're probably referring to Andrea Palladino, who was widely reputed to be the greatest architect in 16th century Italy.
Yeah, I've got
Although
that.
he wasn't well known for like building mazes.
Mm-hmm.
But he has built places throughout this city.
Yeah, he's widely known in Venice because he built a lot of the early buildings here, and he was instrumental in the original sort of how they were going to work around the problem of we need to build up rather than outwards. He was one of the people who helped with the innovations that eventually shaped the current architectural styles of Venice to this very night.
Like you say, it wouldn't be easy to hide a maze or a labyrinth, would it? I mean, someone would have seen such a thing.
Are the pictures of the maze all clearly the same maze?
No.
No. And is it worth trying to find a list of all of the buildings that Palladino built to see if do we know anything about the Academy of the Unknowns? Is that a...
If any of you want to make let's see, it'd probably be an academics role, an intelligence academics role. See if you know anything about it. Okay. So with that, you know that the Academy of the Unknowns was also known as the Loredanian Academy, was founded in 1630, and it was basically like a society of like free-thinking intellectuals who spent their time like debating the nature of the universe and what is the nature of man, and is man any better than a beast, and stuff like that. And over the course of the years, because they were so influential and rich, they gradually accumulated like a lot of political power before, as all of these sort of societies do, they like faded into obscurity and eventually disappeared. However, as you're doing a little bit of research to gain all this information, one thing does strike you. You come across the name of the founder of the Academy of the Unknowns, and the name of that person is Giovanni Francesco Loredan. Who was a well-known Venetian writer and politician back in the day. According to records, he was born in 1607, died in 1661.
Yeah. I mean, Aurelio's conclusion is that someone's using like historical figures as nom de guerre. But yeah, we will have discussed all this as we ponder on these.
Is it worth checking out the bridge just as the sun sets?
That would be a challenge.
I mean, yeah. What's the frequency between these cases in these records? I mean, are any of them close together, or are they fairly?
No, they seem fairly spaced out.
Yeah, so I think monitoring it on a sort of daily or nightly basis would probably be a good use of our time, maybe.
And did we find the location of the Academy of the Unknowns, or just the fact that it exists?
Just the fact that it used to exist. It was effectively it didn't really have like a headquarters as such. It was one of these like bohemian sort of societies of intellectuals and free thinkers who it existed for a bit. They had a little bit of political clout in Venice back in the day, and then they just sort of faded away like a lot of these sort of semi-Masonic societies do.
The bridge. Do you have anyone who could stand watch over it? I think the dawn might be a bit more dangerous than we want to risk for this.
I have a criminal contact who might do it for the right money.
Unless you are keen on arranging lodgings nearby and staying up. That might be the option. Or if we wish to look over it now.
Well, let's look over it now first and see if we can't find something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you all head towards the Rialto Bridge, and as you're drawing nearer from the other side, heading towards the bridge from yourselves, you see an old man with like priest cloaks sort of flapping around him in the strong wind that's picked up. He's basically just at the edge of the bridge, sort of making his way up onto the bridge, and you recognise Father Altamora. He has a slightly sort of, he has like a very, for an old man, he has a very sort of like grim, determined expression on his face, and he's striding with a purpose that seems quite at odd with his elderly frame as he sort of moves forward. And at this point, I'm going to ask Johannes, can you reflexively make me a sense the unseen roll?
Yeah, I was going to make that quite intentionally.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's that. Okay, yeah. So this is the ability is gonna be. To check that. So that would then be wits, because this is reflex, not active. So wits.
Okay. Yeah. So as you see this figure of the Father Altamora making his way up onto the bridge, again you feel a similar sort of cold sensation move down your dead spine, and for a few moments as you look at Father Altamora, you see like a second figure, a sort of like almost like a ghostly like after image sort of overlaid on his body, moving along at the same speed, but obviously of a different person, although you can't really make out the details.
So I will be on the side watching this transpire because I have now been given a vision of my own. So I will be staring into the air, I guess.
Yeah, obviously you're not compelled to do so by any sort of
Yeah,
weird
no,
vision.
this is
It's all good
this is
flavour,
Aurelio's
though.
interest. Yeah, no, he's interested in like what this is and how this will transpire, and if anything's gonna happen.
Yep, so the old priest gets up onto the bridge. He sort of stands at the edge looking over into the canal, and then he falls to the floor. And for a few moments as he falls, you see the sort of spectral outline of this other figure still stood standing with its arms on the bridge, as like the priest just like...
So the figure is just looking over,
Yeah.
like into the canal.
And like I say, it's sort of hazy and like semi-transparent.
Yeah, but it's not like climbing on.
No, it's just like looking into the water.
It's just there. Yeah. So I'll get which one of my companions I have the closest. I'll sort of like
Probably
get
Hugo.
them. So I'll grab Hugo and it's like whisper out the side of my mouth, just like the priest is as you see, but there is another. This got much more complex now, and I am not sure what we should do at this very moment, because I think the priest has been overtaken, shall we say.
And as
Not
you say
by the
this,
Holy Spirit.
yeah, quite. As you say this, looking down at the sort of twisted body of the priest, we now come back to present day, which is where we started with you two looking down at the body of the priest on the bridge, before we went into the flashback that Franco wasn't aware was a flashback. Because we jumped him straight in. Just to explain, Franco, we basically started off the session with these two standing over the body of a priest on a bridge looking down, and then this has all been like how they got to that point. And obviously when we did the original scene, you were just stood slightly back off camera, so you are still there, obviously. Because I didn't know what point you were going to join us, so I didn't want to put words in your character's mouth. But yeah, you were all there. You are now in present time. You look down at the body of this priest on the bridge. You don't see his chest rising and falling. There appear to be no signs of life in his body. As Aurelio like whispers about this like other entity, which you can still sense, of course, Aurelio.
Oh, he's still there.
Yeah, he's invisible to anyone without specialised senses, but he's still there. And in fact, Franco, can you please make me a resolve plus animalism roll? For I believe you can sense the beast in supernatural creatures as a reflective action.
Yeah, I mean, I assumed that would be on the priest himself, though, wouldn't it?
It's a passive ability, so if like a supernatural creature comes nearby and it's got a beast, for want of a better term, some sort of supernatural force of like hunger and stuff like that, or
So
this
if I click. Right, so what was it? Which skills was it? Sorry, John.
it's resolve plus animalism.
Resolve plus animalism. Where the heck is that?
So I don't think you have like direct access from your like the front of the sheet, I think you need to
I mean, I've
have.
got resolve, but
Yeah, you need to have put. John, am I able to edit someone else's sheet, or is that
oh no, I've got it. No, I've got it here,
okay?
so I should
Yeah.
be able to roll it in theory.
Well,
When I
on your
click it, it doesn't roll.
yeah, because on your disciplines tab.
Oh, no, that's rolled it.
Oh, there's something going on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
I put it down as system was resolved plus animalism, and I made it rollable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do
I
it.
think that's right, but it didn't work.
Okay, with 0 successes, you've got like a vague feeling of unease, but it's nothing you can like pinpoint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
right
when,
here.
so when your boy there's like, oh, there's some like evil presence about you, like, oh, that'd explain it. Why I've been feeling so uneasy, but you've not been able to like pinpoint it. Whereas obviously I was like zoomed in a little bit more on what it actually is.
Yeah, also 2 vampires right next to you. So
I'm assuming you
got
sort
that.
of tuned out the vampires you knew about.
I tried to, but I'm not so sure with that. Is there any way we can make it materialize or show itself or communicate with it? Have you got any of these abilities?
I am unsure of what exactly is the nature of this and how the spirit came to be. But well, if the priest starts to, let me revise that. If the priest's body gets up again and attempts to get away from the bridge, catch it, we need to change the scenery if that happens. But let me try something.
Yeah, I'll take up a position sort of the opposite side to sort of cover the other side of the bridge in case he goes one way or the other.
Yeah,
If he
so
does.
John,
Yep.
we're doing I walk forward a little bit, close my eyes, and upon opening them, the irises display a dual reflection of this bridge here, and I am searching for the binding fetters. So, if there are things here that act as fetters, I can identify them by sight, smell, whatever it might be appropriate to the thing itself. So to clarify what this is about, the fetter is some kind of object which acts as a sort of anchor for ghost in this world.
It helps like keep them in like the physical world.
Which like Aurelia is trying to determine like what's the anchor keeping this spirit here, because that doesn't happen naturally.
Okay, so you peer around with your new sight. Again, everything losing its colour and looking dead and decayed, like a pale reflection of the lands of the dead beyond the shroud. And then as you scan your eyes across the bridge, you see that one of the sort of like large stones which makes the sort of like the sides of the bridge, in fact the one that the faint gauzy figure has its hand on, to your sight now, that stone appears to be like dripping blood that is just like pooling onto the cobbles of the bridge before evaporating as a red mist.
I was reading my compel spirit thing here, John, and it appears that I have put the wrong details here because it's all about body parts, and I don't think that's I might have put the homunculus thing in. So anyway, it appears that this stone is a fetter of a kind. Okay. Well, I will walk up next to the spot where the spirit is standing.
Okay.
Does it react in any way?
It appears it doesn't react to you in any specific way.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be aware that you can perceive it, to be
Yeah.
honest. But it's
And
looking
that's,
out.
That's
across,
what I was trying to discern.
Yeah.
Like, does it see me? Because I can see it.
It's not making any sign that it's aware of your presence. It's looking out across the waters, its hand on this, now to your view, bloody stone. And it appears to be sort of talking, like its mouth's barely opening and shutting as though it's like talking to itself. But you can't hear what it's saying. You just see it sort of stood there, sort of gazing out almost wistfully and going, and occasionally you catch as though sort of echoing from a vast incalculable distance, you catch the odd sort of whispered word, but it's like someone just like passing by a train tunnel like miles away. You catch the odd words like maze, city, built.
So I will turn to it and I will say in Italian, which maze are you talking about?
The figure seems to sort of start a bit as though like, you address it. It's like, oh, you can actually see me. And as it turns towards you, it appears to be a young Italian gentleman dressed in quite sort of antique sort of 16th, 17th century clothing of a fairly well cut variety. So like obviously not like a pauper. Turns towards you, and again it's sort of seemingly with an effort of will. It sort of briefly seems to like, only to your vision, seems to like solidify a little bit more and become a little bit less opaque. And it sort of turns and looks at you, and in a very sad voice it says the whole city, I wouldn't have believed it, the whole city, Venice, all of it, it's one big maze. I can barely take it in. And as it turns to like fully look at you, 'cause you've been seeing it sort of side on, as it turns around to see you, now you can see where the right hand side of its head is, like its skull is like caved in, and there's like a thin trail of like ectoplasmic blood sort of drifting out into the air and then dissipating, as though like it was like underwater. And you notice as you look at like the clothes as well are sort of slightly rippling as though it's like underwater. And it carries on, but its voice seems to be like fading in and out, as though like it's an effort for it to make itself heard. And like occasionally it'll get like a bit more faint, and then it'll come back a bit, and then it'll fade out again. But like, each time it comes back, it's for less time, and it's like however it's manifesting itself, even just to you, it's sort of like using its energy up. And it says, why would I don't understand why the Academy would do such a thing. We were supposed to be visionaries. We were supposed to make this world better. We were supposed to free people's minds, not entrap them. I've got to let everyone know.
Let them know what?
This whole city, it's a trap built for the minds of people. It's built to contain something. I haven't managed to find out what, but I'm going to carry on digging, and once I find out, I'm going to let everyone know. It's gone too far now. A secret like this can't be kept. People have a right to know, and it sort of like slams its hand down on this this stone. For a few seconds, its outline shimmers.
Oh, as a last effort, I was like, "What do they call you?"
It turns to look at you and it says, Vasile, Niccolo Vasile.
I nod.
And then he like slams his hand down again. He's like, it's all that
Yeah.
bastard Giovanni's fault.
It always is, isn't it?
But to think they would drag someone, and again his voice is starting to like fade out. He's getting fainter and fainter again, as though whatever energy he'd used had been spent. He says, and to think they would drag a great artist like Palladino into their horrible schemes. It's almost too horrible to contemplate.
I turn to the priest. Quickly check: is there a pulse?
Nope.
Is the flesh cold?
Yep.
A bit more of an extensive check. Like, what's my idea? Like, very quick idea of like how long has the corpse been dead?
You think it's probably been dead for a couple of hours. You expect that like the spirit has been all that's like keeping it going for the past like few hours. And perhaps it was just a case of it. Eventually, the body finally gave out, and the spirit was like, you know that beyond a certain, the more dead a body is, the more energy it takes for a spirit to maintain it. And if they can't maintain it, well, you see what happens. The body falls down dead, and the spirit's just punted out of it.
The body doesn't have any signs of like occultism on it, right? Like, there's no indication that someone made this happen with a ritual, for example.
Not that you can see. The only thing
On the
odd
body.
you notice about the body is that, despite the fact it's now fairly warm, he's wearing gloves.
I'll experimentally tug one of those away.
Yeah, you pull one of the gloves off, and you see that there's blood under all of the fingernails, with the exception of one which is missing.
Yeah. I'll get the priest, and I'll sort of, as best I can, just like drag him along towards Ugo and Franco.
Yeah, not a problem.
I was like, it's quite safe. The spirit is no longer upon us.
Will it return?
I plan to eventually command it to do so, but no. Not
At
now.
this point, I'm going to say you can make me an intelligence occult roll, Jonas. Okay, you may have already worked this out yourself anyway, but with your 3 successes and all you've seen, you suspect one has been happening is that this spirit effectively stays on the bridge, sort of gathering its energy up, and then when it's got enough energy to like jump into someone's body, it jumps into their body, runs around as them for a bit until it runs out of energy, and then it's like, oh, best get back to the bridge, pilots their body back to the bridge. The body falls down dead as it runs out of energy. It jumps out, and then it sort of has to like regather its energy before it can possess somebody else. So you expect that might be why there was like such a long period between each of these incidents, because obviously it takes a long time for a spirit to like gain enough energy to do what it's been doing.
Yep. So I recognize that this is all rather outside of your areas of interest, but the invisible man present was one of the names that we have come across. So I'll let them know about the identity of the spirit. We'll stitch together the history of, well, the spirit told me that this artiste, this architect, way back in the day, was being influenced by, conveniently leaving out the fact that the Giovanni were mentioned, was influenced by Kindred to perpetuate some kind of potentially occult pattern on the city. Aurelia has no idea what that might be, if there even is an actual effect that the mortal, as far as we know, the mortal architect might have actually achieved. But yeah, the spirit knows, the spirit lives on the bridge, in fact, and it knows that back in the day, one of the sort of important architects was a pawn in the great game.
Indeed.
And this is also the source of the bodies on the bridge. Probably some of them fall into the water when the spirit leaves them, because they are dead when they come over here. I believe we have our culprit. It will not do to tell Monsignor Carza that the reason why his friend is now deceased, motion to the priest corpse, is because there is an ancient ghost on the bridge. That will not do. I would suggest we go with another kind of spirit, the kind you can find rather cheaply in the stores. It makes for a better story for Carter. He can accept this with little difficulty. There will be grief, but anyway.
Yeah, let us do that.
Shall you fetch a bottle, or shall I?
And
I shall.
I think, as Hugo says, I shall fetch a bottle, and you begin making your plans to basically souse up this priest's body. So you said, oh, he was drunk, he collapsed on the bridge, which wouldn't be difficult to do given your guys' resources. So I don't think we need to.
Yeah, and I
to go into that.
I am
much.
Quite literally a mortician.
Yeah,
I know about medicine and cadavers, so yeah, we fake it.
I think as you arrange that, that is where we are going to bring this session to a close. Thank you very much for playing, guys. I hope that was okay for you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. And obviously, anyone who's watching this now or in the future, thank you very much. I'll stop the stream and the recording here. We can sort out XP and get some idea of what you want to do next session.